Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Fang Hang opened the mission list again, planning to take on some material transport missions as well. Fang Hang suddenly noticed something and opened the optional mission commission panel. There were new missions? Not just one, but several hundred pages of missions. After carefully reading the mission descriptions, Fang Hang frowned slightly. After all, the mission objectives were not located in this world. It seemed that after his honor level had increased, a networking function had been unlocked, and some tasks from other worlds could now be found. But it was useless. He couldn't travel to other worlds to complete missions. Fang Hang thought for a moment and filtered the mission locations to his own world. Soon, the mission panel returned to what it was like the previous day. It seemed like there was one more. Special mission, construction of the local Prism Mutant Worm Purification Network. Mission requirements: please complete the local Prism Mutant Worm Purification Network construction in the fixed area of the target star system. Mission rewards: 2.5 million plus 2.5 million, additional, plus 1.5 million, travel subsidy. Special description: for construction materials and manuals, please find the Yuan starship and look for Killet, Guard, A, to receive them. This mission has a high difficulty, and it is recommended to form a team. A 500,000 contribution point deposit is required in advance. If the mission fails, the deposit and honor points will be penalized, e.g. if the construction items are damaged during the prism purification process, the player must compensate at the original price. Mission remaining time: 6 days 18 hours. Wow, this mission. The rewards total 6.5 million mission contribution points. Upon closer inspection, the 2.5 million points are from the Spawn Faction's task commission. Completing it would grant corresponding experience points for the faction, while the additional reward and travel subsidy points belong to the task publisher, the Federation. These can only provide contribution points, not honor experience points. Further inspecting the mission description. Wow. Commander Collider? Was he the person responsible for the materials storage warehouse? So, the additional points were from the Federation? Fang Hang looked down and checked his current contribution points. The 500,000 deposit was enough. Looking at the task difficulty on paper, it didn't seem too high. It was just a construction task. Should he take it? Not in a hurry. Fang Hang carefully reviewed the additional materials and task information. He could handle it. Fang Hang quickly made a judgment. During the prism construction process, there was a high chance of mutant worm creature harassment. However, the construction location itself was not within the insect nest's domain. Without the creep, the strength of the insect swarm would be greatly weakened. In addition, Fang Hang had already confirmed that he met the prerequisite conditions for building the prism, and his zombie clones could assist with the construction. Overall, the mission difficulty was controllable. Take it. Fang Hang stopped thinking further and directly accepted the mission. Ding. The player has accepted the mission, construction of the local Prism Mutant Worm Purification Network. The 500,000 contribution points have been locked, will be unlocked upon completion. Please find Colette, Guard, A, to receive the materials needed for the prism construction. Fang Hang closed the game mainframe and walked towards the warehouse section at the back. As usual, the number of guards in the ship was startlingly low. When Colette noticed Fang Hang entering the warehouse area, his heart skipped a beat, and for some reason, he had a bad premonition. No way? It must be a misunderstanding. Fang Hang was probably just here to accept some transport missions. It wasn't bad. It could relieve a large portion of the logistical pressure. Soon, Fang Hang spoke with a soldier and was led by him to Colette. Colette took the lead and said, "Mr. Fang Hang, thank you for your help. The ship's energy reserves are now completely sufficient. If there's another chance, we will certainly consider working with you again. No need to wait for next time. I am here to cooperate this time." Huh? Colette was a bit confused and asked, "I haven't received any notice from my superiors. May I ask what kind of cooperation you're referring to?" Construction of the local prism mutant worm purification network. The mission prompt told me to come to you for coordination. Ah. Colette was completely stunned. The prism construction task was supposed to be handled by the Federation itself. However, the frontline insect swarm had encountered a major crisis last night, and the situation had become very problematic. The Federation's military department couldn't spare the manpower to execute the construction mission. Out of desperation, the Federation had posted the task on the Spawn network, hoping that allied factions with Spawn factions would help. A large portion of the Spawn faction's contribution points reserves had been consumed for this. The construction task was actually a team-based mission, and the Federation had set a hidden threshold. At least a small team with an interstellar spaceship had to be able to accept the mission, right? How else could they complete it? But they never expected Fang Heng to be on their ship. And even more surprising, Fang Heng had the 500,000 points deposit. And now, he actually had the guts to directly accept the mission? Was he sure he could complete it? He couldn't have accepted the mission without even understanding what it was about, right? Colette was momentarily confused, not knowing how to explain to Fang Heng what this mission meant or how to convince him to cancel the mission. After all, once the mission was cancelled, Fang Heng would directly lose the 500,000 deposit. Colette. Huh? What? The materials for constructing the prism, how much longer will it take to prepare? I noticed the mission has a time limit, so... Okay. Colette, who had experienced many storms, took a deep breath, quickly calmed himself, and began to think of a solution. Please follow me. The two of them were led by the soldier into the depths of the rear hold, to a certain warehouse. Chapter 2888, guarding two Federation soldiers stood outside the warehouse, keeping watch. In a ship with a shortage of personnel, having such guards was considered quite extravagant. As he pushed the door open and entered, Fang Heng saw metal crates of all sizes neatly arranged in the warehouse. Some of the crates were particularly large, measuring up to 5 meters in length. These are some of the materials we've received so far, Colette explained as he walked with Fang Heng into the warehouse. The remaining 2/3 will arrive within the next 12 hours through the Spawn transition system. Fang Heng glanced around the warehouse and asked, is this all of it? Colette nodded and replied, not just this. This is just the most important part. There are 7 other warehouses of this size. So much? Fang Heng was a little surprised. Building the prism structures wasn't supposed to be difficult, but it seemed it wouldn't be easy after all. The 6.5 million contribution points were indeed not so easy to earn. No matter. The zombie clones would hack and grind for a while longer, and everything would be fine. As for the size of the crates, it was a bit too large, but it wasn't a big problem. The underground transport passages could be expanded again. All in all, it was a bit troublesome but not a big issue. Colette caught a glimpse of Fang Heng's expression and made up his mind. He would try to make him give up the task. By making Fang Heng feel the difficulty of the mission, he hoped he would voluntarily back down. This was a large-scale task that required a team of hundreds of people to complete. Only Fang Heng, inexplicably, accepted the task. Ahem, Colette cleared his throat and looked at the soldier who was pushing a cart full of books over. He continued, these books are part of the pre-task for the partial prism mutant worm purification network construction. There are 18 volumes in total, and you must read them before starting the construction. Also, the books contain the parameters required for building the partial prism mutant worm purification network. I don't know if you've learned any mechanical construction or futuristic technology skills, but these are necessary prerequisites, or you won't be able to master the skills after reading the books. No problem, I've prepared. Help me load the cart, Fang Heng said. Each volume of the books contained more than 10 individual books, filling a whole crate. Fang Heng casually picked one up, flipped through a few pages, and then put it back, closing the metal crate. It wasn't a big issue, the zombie clones could read these skill-related books slowly when they were back. There were plenty of zombie clones, and they could read simultaneously. It would take at most an hour or two to finish. Colette was a little taken aback by how quickly Fang Heng agreed. Was he really not going to give up? For an ordinary player, reading these books alone would take 2 to 3 hours, let alone the skill mastery success rate. Was he really so stubborn? Fang Heng looked up and asked, where is the location plan for the construction of the prism tower? Ah, you're talking about the most difficult part of the task, Colette said, calming himself down before continuing. The defense line needs to be set up close to the insect nest area to achieve the best extermination effect, so the construction site is near the insect nest area. We've selected a relatively safe location, but even so, the danger level is very high, and we'll definitely be disturbed by the insect swarm during the construction. Fang Heng furrowed his brows and asked, is it within the mutant worm swarm area? Yes, it's in Area A, the danger zone. Fang Heng thought to himself, It was expected that the prism tower would be built in the most dangerous place. Just as anticipated. But it was fine. Feng Heng looked up and said, I understand. Is there anything else I need to pay special attention to in this task? Colette raised an eyebrow in surprise. After learning the difficulty of the task, this guy still wasn't giving up? Feng Heng, it's not as easy as you think. Area is a region densely populated with insect nests. Although we've chosen a relatively safe location to establish the defense line, the danger level is extremely high. There are at least 5D level insect nests nearby, and during the prism construction, we'll definitely be attacked by mutant worms. Alright, I get it. Feng Heng waved his hand, not paying much attention to Colette's words, and said, unless there's something else, I'll head out now. Wait. Colette, seeing that he couldn't stop Feng Heng, blocked his path and said, as the task publisher, we'll be accompanying you to the prism device construction site to assist and supervise the construction. If necessary, I will terminate the commission. Of course, that's fine. I'll follow you, Feng Heng said as he walked out of the warehouse. Leave the warehouse door open, I'll start getting the robots to transport the materials now. Colette watched Feng Heng's departing figure, took a deep breath, and called a nearby soldier over. Sir. What can I do for you? No matter what method you use, inform the captain immediately. Feng Heng has accepted the task of building the partial prism mutant worm purification network. I couldn't persuade him, so let the captain decide. Understood. Colette gave his orders and immediately left the storage room. Damn. Feng Heng was moving too fast. The transport robots had already started working, moving the crates outside the ship. Colette felt anxious. It seemed Feng Heng was determined to complete the mission. If the mutant worm swarm attacked, the building materials inside the crates could be damaged. So someone had to be sent to protect the transport all the way. At the very least, they couldn't let the prism defense structure get destroyed by the mutant worms. Colette called a soldier over and said in a low voice, go find Lieutenant Jane, tell him I have an urgent order from the captain. I have a special mission, and I need him to come help. Also, get as many squads as possible to join. It's urgent. Understood. On the other side, Feng Heng was controlling the spawn transport robots to move the materials. He glanced over at Colette, who appeared to be in a hurry. What was he anxious about? Wasn't it just building a defensive structure? The Federation had planned the location for the prism defense line. Several transport ships hovered in the air, making a few rounds before levitating. Beam after beam of transition light condensed. Several Federation soldiers stepped out from the transition beams and immediately pulled out their guns to aim at the surrounding mutant worm creatures. Whoosh! Whoosh! The small mutant worms on the ground were quickly cleared. Confirmed safe. The squad members waved at the transport ship in the air. The ship slowly descended, and the hatch opened. The Federation soldiers' squad stepped out one by one. Not long ago, Boyd and Jane's teams were resting in the hall when they received Colette's distress message and hurried to the front lines to provide reinforcement. Looks like Feng Heng hasn't arrived yet. Colette, who was also in the group, walked out of the hatch, looked around, and nodded. This area is very dangerous. There are insect nests in all directions, and we could be attacked by mutant worms at any moment. We must stay alert. Chapter 2889, The Barrier. Boyd raised his hand to signal his subordinate team to form a defensive formation and asked, so Feng Heng took on the construction mission by himself? Colette nodded. Damn, that's impressive. Boyd admitted that Feng Heng was strong, but he also acknowledged that claiming Feng Heng could solo a B-level insect nest was an exaggeration. The only one capable of actually doing that would probably be that even more terrifying woman. Thinking of Charlene, Boyd couldn't help but shrink his neck. Anyway, until we hear back from our superiors, let's try to protect the prism construction equipment as best as we can. Just the two of us? 3 more teams are in the Petri dish undergoing body repairs. Once they're finished, they'll come to assist. Alright, Jane shrugged and said, whether it's 3 teams or not, it doesn't make much of a difference. Colette gave a wry smile. Indeed, dealing with a mission of this level, whether with 2 teams or 5, they would all be sent to their doom. As they were talking, subtle cracks suddenly appeared on the ground not far away. The Federation soldiers immediately became alert, raising their guns to aim at the ground. Ka, 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 ka. The ground rapidly expanded, quickly revealing a pitch-black pit. Whoosh! Feng Heng leapt out from the pit, looked up at Jane, Boyd, and the Federation soldiers, then waved his hand in greeting. Such a coincidence. Did Colette call all of you here? Feng Heng thought to himself that the Federation had arrived pretty quickly. He was the one who was late. After all, digging a large underground passage had wasted quite a bit of time with the Liquor Group. But it wasn't a big deal. After all, the digging was a one-time task. Jane saw Feng Heng and waved at him with a smile. You guessed it right. By the way, the contribution points should have been credited to your account, right? If not, I can help you follow up. Yeah, it's all there. You really do things fast, brother. Feng Heng thought that Jane was quite to his liking. On the one hand, Jane wasn't as rigid as other officers and was very enthusiastic, never getting hung up on small details. But mainly, he paid up quickly and wasn't like other parties that created a lot of hassle. Haha, glad to hear it. By the way, do you have such confidence in this mission? Colette's worried, you know. Don't look at us, we don't have much combat strength, we're just here to help out. If you need anything, feel free to ask. I'll make sure to support you with everything I have. Don't mention it. Feng Heng glanced at Colette behind the group and said softly, don't worry, I have everything arranged. It'll be fine. As the two were chatting, Colette walked toward them. Feng Heng, sorry, I'm still a little worried, so I came personally to check things out. Colette reminded him again, Feng Heng, be careful. If things go south, prioritize your safety. If possible, please try to protect the prism construction components as best as you can. Of course, no problem. Feng Heng surveyed the surroundings and confirmed to Colette, the prism construction site is here, right? Yes, anywhere within a 2-kilometer radius from here is fine for building the prism defense crystal tower. But I need to especially remind you that besides this small area, there are a large number of insect nests nearby. The insect swarms often spread out and interfere with the construction of the prism crystal towers. Colette had heard about Feng Heng's strength, but he wasn't entirely sure of the specifics. He warned seriously, be extra careful. Once the defensive facility reaches Tier 2, the energy waves emitted by the crystal towers will provoke the surrounding insect swarms, and they will actively leave their nests and attack us. Is that so? Feng Heng looked around and then opened the surveying device to check the environment again. Just as Colette had said, the position chosen by the Federation wasn't ideal. There was a large cluster of scattered D-level and C-level insect nests nearby, and to the right, there was an even more densely packed insect nest gathering point. Area A. There were also 2 B-level insect nests relatively close by. To make it easier to build the prism tower here, we did several clearing missions for the nearby insect nests some time ago. Jane also added, unfortunately, most of the Federation's forces have been deployed to the main battlefield, and each team's strength is limited, so progress has been slow. There are still a lot of insect nests remaining nearby. Feng Heng looked at the information on the surveying device and thought to himself that the remaining insect nests they hadn't cleared were more than just a few. There are also 2 more teams on their way to reinforce. Once we establish the temporary base and ensure its safety, another team of construction engineers will arrive to help with the prism construction. Feng Heng glanced at Colette. He thought to himself that Colette was quite the good guy. Even though he was constantly trying to talk him out of it, warning him and advising him at every turn, he still made sure to offer all the help he could. Nighttime is when the insect nests become most active, so let's build the base quickly and finish setting up the temporary base before dark. Build a temporary base? Feng Heng looked at Colette and said, I don't remember the mission requiring the construction of a base. Huh? Colette was taken aback by Feng Heng's words and was momentarily at a loss for words. The mission requirements didn't mention it? Well, isn't that common sense? How could they build the defense prism tower without a temporary base? Where would they store the materials? How would they resist the insect swarms attacking midway? Forget it, no trouble. Jane, could you please help with building the temporary base? I'll focus on setting up the prism defense tower and finish the defensive line setup as quickly as possible. Jane didn't quite understand Feng Heng's plan, but he gave him a thumbs up. No problem, it's a small thing, leave it to me. Thanks. Feng Heng nodded, and under the watchful eyes of the Federation soldiers, he walked to the empty area ahead, quickly bringing his hands together in front of him. Whoosh! A book glowing with 7-colored light, the Book of Elements, appeared in front of Feng Heng. Huh? Upon seeing this, the Federation soldiers' hearts stirred, and they all turned their attention to Feng Heng. The Book of Elements. Previously, they had only seen Feng Heng summon creatures to fight and thought he was a top-tier summoner. Why was he suddenly summoning the Book of Elements? Was he an elemental science player? Earth Wall Barrier. Feng Heng shouted, instantly channeling his psychic force into the Book of Elements in front of him. Bang! 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 In the next moment, heavy barriers began to rise from the ground around them. The thick barriers gathered, forming a dense shield around a large area in front of them. The barriers slowly converged into a point in the air. In just half a minute, the thick earth barriers connected, forming a sealed, semicircular structure with a radius of 50 meters and a height of over 10 meters. Chapter 2890, Reading. Feng Heng put away the Book of Elements. Elemental skills were still very useful for constructing defensive buildings. Of course, there were drawbacks. The defense effect of the earth barrier was only average, unable to withstand too many attacks. Feng Heng turned around and saw the Federation soldiers looking at him with astonished eyes. A high-tier elemental player. The earth barrier skill was one that many players could use. It was an advanced skill in the elemental system. However, no one had ever used it in such an exaggerated way. Feng Heng, you're impressive. Didn't expect you to have this move. Jane quickly recovered from his shock, walking over to Feng Heng's side and praising him. I thought you were a summoner, but turns out you're an elemental player. Just know a little. Colette, who had been listening to their conversation, was also a bit confused. Elemental? Summoner? Wasn't Feng Heng a logistics player? But what was he doing with such a huge barrier? Colette was completely puzzled by Feng Heng's actions and walked up to him, asking, Feng Heng, is this an earth barrier? To avoid being harassed by the swarm, I made a simple barrier. Ah. Colette thought to himself that this barrier might not be enough to block the swarm. Don't worry, we'll ensure the mission is completed. Feng Heng said as he patted Colette on the shoulder and then opened the game hint panel to start gathering a liquor swarm. He nodded and said, you guys continue setting up the temporary camp, don't worry about me. If there's anything, I'll come find you. With that, Feng Heng walked toward the massive earth barrier, leaving the group in confusion. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Tiny white light spots surrounded Feng Heng's body. What the heck? Colette was shocked to see Feng Heng's body disappear as if he had walked directly into the earth barrier. What? Colette was stunned. Where did he go? Into the barrier? How did he do that? Was it a talent ability? It's spatial ripple. A Federation lieutenant, who had been silent all this time, looked at Feng Heng's disappearing direction, his face serious. He said in a low voice, from my judgment, it should be secondary space projection. Given how casually he did it, his spatial science level must be pretty high. Everyone, what's all of this fuss about? Boyd laughed and patted everyone's shoulders. Alright, the guy's fine for now. The captain hasn't given any new orders. Let's focus on building the temporary camp. We have to do it sooner or later. Colette scratched his head. Something felt off. It seemed like these people were really preparing to carry out the mission. Inside the earth barrier, a crack appeared on the ground. Lickers began crawling out of the crack, quickly expanding it until an underground passageway appeared. Moments later, transport robots began pushing boxes onto the ground. Next. Let's start learning. Feng Heng walked up to the boxes and opened one, revealing books filled with instructions for constructing a prism-based mutant worm purification network. 18 volumes. Each volume contained dozens of books. More than 200 lickers continuously emerged from the underground cave, forming flesh cocoons inside the cave. Zombie clones crawled out of the flesh cocoons and, wobbling, walked toward the boxes. As they passed by the boxes, they picked up a book and found a spot to read. Ding! The player's zombie clone, normal form, is using the reading skill to read Prism Defense Construction System, Volume 1, 3rd edition, reading prerequisites met. Current reading success rate, 12%, ding! The player's zombie clone. After a few minutes, each zombie clone held a book, and a slow channeling bar appeared above their heads. Due to the segmented reading, lacking connections between volumes, the success rate was generally low, mostly in the single digits. Feng Heng wasn't in a hurry. With so many zombie clones, after a few rounds, some would get lucky and successfully complete reading, which was much more efficient than grinding it out himself. The reading time wasn't long. About 20 minutes later, the channeling bars above the zombie clones' heads were completed one by one. Ding! The player's zombie clone, normal form, successfully read the book, but failed to master the skill. Player gains partial related experience. Player's mastery success rate will increase by 5 to 10% upon rereading. Feng Heng looked at the game hint. As expected, after a failed reading, they gained some experience points, and the success rate for mastering the skill would increase by 5 to 10% the next time they read. He continued. He would let the zombie clones keep grinding. After a few hours of this, it would probably be done. So, what was next? Feng Heng lowered his head and thought. The Prism Defense Construction System was divided into 3 stages. According to Colette, when they activated the Prism Tower during the second stage, the energy waves released by the tower would cause the surrounding swarm to sense a threat. At that time, a large number of lickers would likely gather to guard the Prism Tower's safety. But considering that the swarm included long-range rock-armored gun worms, Feng Heng couldn't be sure if the defense would be enough to stop all their attacks. Instead of waiting for that, why not take advantage of the current time and try to clear a few insect nests, weakening the upcoming insect swarm? After all, if he had free time, he might as well clear as many as possible. With his mind made up, Feng Heng left the zombie clones in the cave to continue reading the construction manual, stood up, and used his secondary space projection skill to teleport outside the Earth barrier. Outside the barrier, Boyd and the Federation soldiers had just finished setting up the framework for the temporary camp and were waiting for materials to continue the construction when they saw Fang Heng walk out from the Earth barrier. They all turned their eyes toward him. Jane waved at Fang Heng from a distance. "Fang Heng, how's the situation? Do you need help?" Fang Heng nodded, walking over to Jane. He glanced around and asked, "Where's Colette?" "He just left. We needed some materials for the temporary base, so he went to see if he could help transport them. He's also responsible for the overall ship transport, so he can't stay here and supervise everything." "Alright, no worries. Jane, I do need your assistance." "No problem. What should I do?" "There are a large number of insect nests nearby, and the swarm might impact the prism defense system later. I want to take this opportunity to clear some of the nests." Jane's expression immediately turned serious when he heard that it was about clearing insect nests. He had seen the strength of Fang Heng summoned creatures with his own eyes. If they had summoned creatures to help, they would clear the insect nests efficiently, and they could even gain Federation merit in the process. Chapter 2891, Battle Record. However, our people have left the temporary camp. There shouldn't be any issues here, right? I will leave some summoned creatures to guard the camp. Are your supplies still sufficient? We brought some supplies when we came, and more weapons and reinforcements will be transported over shortly. We can manage for at least 2 hours. Good, get ready. We'll leave right away. Jane nodded, walked over to speak quietly with the other 4 Federation team captains, and after that, each team captain returned to organize their team. Apart from Boyd and Jane, Fang Heng didn't know the 3 new officers who had just arrived. The 3 of them had only heard of Fang Heng's great achievements from Boyd and Jane, and they were a bit skeptical. After all, the way the 2 described him was quite exaggerated. "Thanks for your help, everyone. We will try to clear the insect nests nearby, starting from the closest ones. For now, we'll choose the lowest level D-level nests first." Fang Heng said as he checked the area map. "Captains, you can split up to speed things up." The captains exchanged looks. A D-level insect nest would usually take 2-3 days for an ordinary team to clear. Everyone then selected a target location. "Let's go." "What? Fang Heng? Who was Fang Heng?" At the center of the insect nest in Area A, Captain Giselle was confused after reading the urgent request sent by Colette. "A player? When did he get on the ship?" She called over Vice Captain Gorn to ask, and then she remembered that Fang Heng was personally recommended by Instructor Benny. He was said to be very strong and could be of help. In the past few days, Charlene had encountered a crisis with abnormal insect behavior, and Fang Heng had been fighting alongside the Federation elite soldiers at the front. This matter had slipped from her mind. Who would have thought that such a player would stir up so much trouble? Giselle felt a headache coming on. Now that it has come to this, we must make a decision. The spawn mission system is complex, and if we unilaterally terminate the mission, we'll just waste a lot of contribution points. Since it has come this far, we can only think of a way to make Fang Heng give up the mission himself. "Captain," Gorn thought for a moment and suggested, "I've met Fang Heng once. He was able to gather 500,000 contribution points in such a short time, showing his strength. Perhaps we can give him a chance?" Giselle raised an eyebrow and looked at Gorn. "You think highly of him?" "I can't say for sure, but I have a strange feeling that he might be able to create a miracle." Giselle paused and looked helpless. "Moreover, if we terminate the mission and issue a new one now, we will suffer significant losses, and it will waste a lot of time. The mission difficulty in the spawn system will increase further." Giselle furrowed her brows. Gorn continued, "Fang Heng is a player personally recommended by Benny. I'm willing to take a chance." "All right," Giselle turned to the soldier and ordered sharply, "Immediately reply to Colette, tell him to take charge of this mission and keep a close watch on Fang Heng. Make sure the construction plan goes smoothly. If the mission succeeds, Fang Heng will be the one to take all the credit. I'll give him the position of vice captain." "Yes." Outside the Crystal Tower construction area, a large number of lickers poured out from a D-level insect nest's mother spider beneath the ground, charging toward the nearby rock-armored gun worms, tearing into them, quickly surrounding the entire insect nest mother, and disrupting the defense line of the insect swarm. Bang! 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 The Federation military team at the rear aimed at the insect nest mother and continuously fired their weapons. Large chunks of blood and flesh exploded from the insect nest. It was exhilarating. Boyd felt that the battle was incredibly refreshing. In just 10 minutes, with the help of Fang Heng summoned creatures, a D-level insect nest was completely cleared. For the officers, individual contribution points and honor points from the spawn system didn't matter much. What really mattered was the Federation officers' achievements. That was the key to whether they could get promoted. Clearing a D-level insect nest could earn a lot of Federation achievements. As the insect nest was eliminated and the communication interference slightly faded, Boyd calmed down, looked at the data displayed on the measuring device, and took the communicator from his subordinate. Okay, Mr. Fang, I understand. Boyd put down the communicator and waved to his soldiers, directing them. Rest here for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, head to the B92 coordinates to clear the next insect nest. Yes. Understood. Meanwhile, other Federation combat teams were following similar procedures. Jane, who had worked with Fang Hang before, had an idea of the Licker's combat strength, but the 3 new Federation officers were stunned by the Licker swarm controlled by Fang Hang. It was their first time seeing these creatures. The terrifying individual combat strength, combined with their ability to burrow from underground, and their impressive numbers. No wonder Boyd boasted so much. Thankfully, Fang Hang was an ally. If these creatures were mutant worms from the enemy, what would they do? At that moment, Fang Hang was using his vampire powers to levitate in the air, controlling the Licker swarm and coordinating with each player team to purify the insect nests. The Licker swarm caused chaos inside each D-level insect nest, disrupting the long-range defense and greatly reducing the number of mutant worms inside. Afterward, the Federation teams that arrived would use higher-level energy beam weapons to gather and fire at the insect nests, quickly obliterating them. The new Federation officers, who had been skeptical and surprised at first, were now all filled with excitement. Khalid was a true brother. He had introduced them to such a great mission to earn achievements. In the past, clearing a D-level insect nest had been incredibly difficult and torturous, often taking a day or two, and they'd end up lying in a petri dish to recover from toxins. It was an awful experience. But now, it was nothing like that. It was practically a free ride to earn achievements. The more insect nests they cleared, the more contribution points they earned. Brothers. Mr. Fang has marked the next insect nest. Hold on a little longer. Those who can keep going, follow me. Those who can't, rest for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, gather with us. Yes. Each team led by a lieutenant was in a similar state, full of energy and ready to work hard. After 2 hours passed, Boyd, Jane, and another Federation team gathered together, dealing with a sea-level insect nest. Boyd had already lost count of how many insect nests had been cleared, but it felt like at least 10, including 2 sea-level nests that had been cleared with other teams. This kind of battlefield achievement was something they could never have imagined before. They would definitely be reported and praised when they returned. Chapter 2892, A Trick Report. The soldier hurried over and whispered, Captain, our energy ammunition is down to less than 10%, and all backup energy has been depleted. It's estimated that we can last for a maximum of 10 minutes before the energy is completely exhausted. Damn. Boyd couldn't help but curse quietly upon hearing the report. He was just getting into the heat of things, and now you tell me there's no more ammo? This was ridiculous. Jane, who had also been enjoying himself, immediately lost half of his good mood upon hearing the news, muttering under his breath, what's going on with Colette? Hasn't the supply material arrived yet? He's been reliable all this time, why is he messing up at such a critical moment? Send an urgent message to the ship, remind them to send another batch of combat supplies over, tell them it's critical, a matter of life and death. They must send another batch of supplies no matter what. Understood. At this point, that was the only thing they could do. Boyd sighed inwardly. He understood the situation. The main battlefield was tight, and things weren't going well there. Colette had a hard time juggling everything, and it would be impossible for him to send over a batch of firearms and supplies in the short term. The two quickly discussed and decided to deal with the sea-level insect nest first, and after that, temporarily stop the offensive, leaving the last 3% of ammunition reserves in case of emergencies. Soon, with the sea-level insect nest shattered under the beam weapon fire, the creep on the ground quickly retreated. After the intense battle, the soldiers' fatigue began to show, and they temporarily rested in place. Before long, Fang Hang approached. He looked at the resting Federation soldiers and asked, tired? Not exactly tired. Jane saw Fang Hang and walked over, shrugging helplessly. We've all been trained. One shot of a potion and we can fight non-stop for 12 hours without a problem. But right now, we've run into some trouble. What kind of trouble? Our ammunition has run out. Boyd walked over as well and said, Colette promised to send more, but it hasn't arrived yet. It wasn't entirely Colette's fault. When the first transport ship came, the Federation forces brought a lot of supplies, including a large amount of ammunition. According to Colette's preemptive calculations, even if they were attacked by the insect swarm, this batch of supplies would be enough for them to hold out until reinforcements arrived. But unexpectedly, Colette never imagined that several squads would take the initiative to deal with the insect nests outside. Ammunition consumption increased several times. I see. Colette's supply line ran into problems, and the materials can't be transported over, right? Feng Heng understood immediately after hearing this. Transporting supplies? Coincidentally, this wasn't something new to him. The underground passages had already been dug, and the supplies were already on hand. All they needed was to send over another batch of beam weapon materials. Zombie clones could help with the transportation. That said, he couldn't just work for free. He needed to figure out a way to get Colette to cough up more. Feng Heng rubbed his chin, a hint of greed in his eyes. Ship warehouse area. Colette received the latest order from the captain via the remote information system. Fully assist Feng Heng in constructing the prism defensive line. Cut corners where possible, but if an emergency arises, reinforcements from all the Federation teams entering the ship can be mobilized. Ensure the construction of the prism defensive line is flawless. Colette wanted to cry. Was there any hope of ensuring the construction was flawless in this situation? Feng Heng and his team didn't even have the ability to complete the mission. Colette took a deep breath. As a soldier, completing the mission was his first priority, and right now, he had to do everything in his power to help Feng Heng. But the situation on the main battlefield was also grim. All available forces had to be concentrated there. How much spare capacity do the transport ships have? I need to send a batch of war supplies to the temporary base. The last transport ship is heading to the main battlefield with urgent supplies. It won't be available for at least 2 hours. Understood, arrange it immediately. All backup supplies, except for the front line, will be prioritized for the Prism Tower installation zone. Yes, understood. Report. A soldier hurried over and reported, there's new information from the Prism installation zone. Upon hearing the words Prism installation zone, Colette felt a sense of unease rise within him and said solemnly, speak. Lieutenant Boyd sent a message saying that the weapon ammunition is running low and that we need to send a new batch of supplies. It's urgent, and they hope we can send a batch of combat weapons and ammunition over immediately. What? Colette froze upon hearing that. Hadn't the first batch of weapons and ammunition been sent over? And it was already used up so quickly? Had they been attacked? Did the Prism installation zone come under insect swarm attack? The report didn't mention it, so it seems it didn't happen. That was a relief. Colette let out a sigh of relief. If they had been attacked, they should have requested reinforcements, not more ammunition and weapons. So why the urgency for more weapons and ammunition? Was it that they didn't have enough of what was already delivered? Could it be that they had gone out to actively fight the insect swarm? Also, the soldier flipped through the information sheet in his hand and looked up. Feng Heng asked us to purchase some spawn mining machinery for him. Mining machinery? Colette was even more confused. The spawn mining machinery was really good high efficiency, but it was extremely expensive and inconvenient to transport. It could easily be damaged during an attack. So it wasn't practical on the battlefield. Colette rubbed his temples, thought for a moment, and said, fine, let's temporarily allocate a batch of weapons and ammunition and send it to them urgently. Just as he was speaking, a player suddenly reported, Captain, Feng Heng is back. Huh? Colette, hearing this, looked outside. He saw Feng Heng stepping onto an energy crystal hoverboard, walking out of the underground passage toward the ship. This guy was back? Colette's heart stirred, and he immediately went to the deck to greet him. Feng Heng, what brings you here? Hey, Sir Colette. Feng Heng smiled, looking quite friendly as he spoke. I guess you must have an urgent batch of supplies to send to the Prism Defense Line installation zone, right? I'm guessing your transport ships are running low on capacity, and you're thinking of posting a mission to hire mercenaries to help with the transportation, right? Feng Heng's smile couldn't be held back. Haha. Colette was taken aback, then immediately realized what was happening. His face stiffened. So, this whole urgent need for supplies thing was all just a setup by him? To come here and grab a piece of the Federation's transportation mission contribution points? Really? Colette almost wanted to say, I can give you the contribution points for free, but could you stop doing this to me? Chapter 2893, Disposition. Feng Heng looked at Colette, who had a slightly helpless expression, and couldn't help but smile inside. Haha, just kidding, we're all just taking advantage of the government's resources. Feng Heng said as he patted Colette's shoulder and quietly said, give me a friendly price, transport mission assigned to me, number 9. What about the weapons and ammo? Are they ready? Boyd and the others have been rushing for them. What trouble did you encounter on the front line? Why is there such an urgent need for weapon energy supplies? Colette knew Boyd and the other officers' personalities and was sure they wouldn't do what Feng Heng did, taking advantage of the situation. They had issued an urgent demand mission, and there had to be a reason for it. It's not that bad. While there's still some time, I led a few teams to clear the nearby insect nests. Ah. Colette thought to himself, did I guess right? He really went out with a few teams to actively eliminate insect nests? Was this guy really that strong? Fang Heng's expression turned a bit more serious as he continued. I thought Boyd's teams couldn't be relied on, and they ran out of ammo quickly. They need to wait for the ammo while cleaning insect nests, so I came to help with transport. Alright. Colette steadied himself. It was a relief that it wasn't a dangerous encounter. If they could clear out the nearby lower-tier insect nests, it would be a great help for the construction of the defensive crystal tower. As for transporting materials, Colette looked at Fang Heng. If nothing else, he fully trusted Fang Heng's logistics and transport capabilities. He was completely at ease letting Fang Heng handle material transportation. It was just a matter of issuing a mission. No big deal. He could also outsource the mission of transporting construction materials for the temporary base to Fang Heng, freeing himself up to concentrate all his strength on supporting the main battlefield supply line. Alright, follow me. I took you to the warehouse, where there were enough weapons and ammunition. Complete the registration, and then go to Deputy Cole to collect them. Colette said as he hurriedly led Fang Heng to the number 2 district warehouse. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Fang Heng, you should have heard about the bad situation on the main battlefield. I want to give you all transport missions for both the combat and construction materials for the prism setup area. The contribution points will be calculated according to the normal level. What do you think? Of course, no problem. Fang Heng agreed right away. It was a simple task. He could also earn some more contribution points. Why not? I'll be focusing on the main battlefield for now. The prism setup area can't be handled in the meantime, but once I finish up, I'll bring people to reinforce. Colette's expression grew serious as he looked at Fang Heng. Do you need anything else? Fang Heng thought for a moment and said, if possible. I need more manpower and more firepower support. Lickers can't use weapons, so when dealing with the insect nest mother, the damage output wasn't enough. The energy weapons provided by the spawns were specially made and could cause extra damage to mutant worm creatures. Alright, I'll help you request more personnel deployment. Report. Captain, the required materials for transport are ready. Colette called over another officer and introduced, Fang Heng, this is Vice Officer Cole. If you need anything, he'll assist you. No problem, you can go ahead and handle your things. Fang Heng gave Colette an okay gesture and started using his mind control ability to operate the transport robots and begin moving weapons and ammo. Colette still had some concerns and gave the order, from now on, all external reinforcements with teams of fewer than 120 members, except those at the front, will remain on standby. After they rest, I need to arrange transport planes to the gathering point to cooperate with Fang Heng in military actions. Yes. 5 hours later. At the prism setup area. After 5 hours of high-intensity mental operations, the Federation team had entered a fatigued state, relying on potions to keep going. If they continued, they would enter a new stage of medicinal resistance, so a few officers discussed and decided to return to the temporary base to rest. After taking some potions, the soldiers immediately lay down and fell into a deep sleep. After resting for half an hour, they would be back to full strength and ready for high-intensity combat again. Fang Heng, seizing the opportunity while everyone rested, returned to the center of the half-sphere barrier formed by the earth walls not far away. Ding! The player has completed reading the Prism Defense Construction System, Volume 118, and related skills have been mastered. You can now carry out related building and repairs. Ding! This item is in your backpack and can increase construction speed by 5%, done. The zombie clones had also finished reading the books. Next, they could officially start setting up the defense facilities. Let's begin. Fang Heng controlled the zombie clones to gather slowly. Relying solely on himself, he couldn't possibly complete the Prism Defense System construction in just 7 days. He still needed the zombie clones. Fang Heng stood up and tried giving instructions to the zombie clones to build the prism buildings. After receiving the materials, the zombie clones arrived at the predetermined location to build the crystal towers, and the channeled progress bars appeared above their heads. Done. The only downside was that the number of zombie clones building simultaneously was limited, so the speed couldn't be greatly increased. But it was enough. At the same time, over 100 zombie clones worked tirelessly in shifts, and the first phase of the construction was expected to be completed in 24 hours. Fang Heng observed the zombie clones' actions for a while and optimized the combat plan roughly. After confirming everything was set, he opened the survey device again. After over 5 hours of intense combat, there were no insect nests within a 2-kilometer radius of the construction point. A good result. But still far from the limit. Next, he could continue clearing the area and clean up all the insect nests in the surrounding region. Right now, the biggest issue was the 2 B-tier insect nests in the right side area. To ensure efficiency, Fang Heng temporarily left those 2 nests alone and chose to clear the western route. During this period, the insect swarms emerging from the B-tier nests attacked the camp several times. Luckily, Fang Heng had gathered a batch of lickers to provide protection, or they might have been raided. If those 2 B-tier insect nests weren't cleared, the threat would always be there. Since he would have to deal with them sooner or later, why not focus on eliminating the 2 B-level insect nests first? He had already dealt with the C-level insect nests, and gathering 2-3 teams could easily destroy them. As for the B-tier insect nests, their strength was still unclear. Let's try it out. Fang Heng stood up and once again used his secondary space projection ability to step out. Outside the round rock earth defense barrier, the Federation officers who had been talking all turned to look at Fang Heng. Mr. Fang. What are you guys discussing? Chapter 2894, The Target. Haha, we were just saying, Mr. Fang, if you'd come a bit earlier, with your summoned creatures coordinating, the pressure on the main battlefield wouldn't be as high as it is now. Mr. Fang, said an officer who had been quiet during the battle, the number of insect nests in my area is extremely high. Although we've cleared a large portion of them, the crimson crystals at the root of the nests haven't been completely destroyed. If we don't deal with them soon, the nearby insect swarm might take over again. Everyone nodded in agreement. Don't worry about that, Fang Heng said. The machinery is already collecting the crimson ore, and I've left some summoned creatures behind to guard the area. Fang Heng paused, then nodded at the others. I just thought of a new tactic, but it might be a bit dangerous. I wanted to ask if you all would be willing to try it with me. The officers exchanged glances and immediately seemed eager to give it a try. Jane chuckled and said, Mr. Fang, we're soldiers. We're always ready to sacrifice ourselves. We never know what fear is. So, tell us, what mission do you need us to handle? It's on me. I'm planning to check out the B-tier insect nest, Fang Heng said. The group fell silent at once, their expressions changing slightly. Wait a minute. You're serious about this? That's a B-tier insect nest. Its strength level is completely different from the normal C-tier or D-tier nests. Aside from the central B-tier nest, there are other insect nest-like clusters, with a few C-tier and D-tier nests surrounding the B-tier nest. It's practically deep into the fungal blanket. Very hard to deal with. It's definitely not something their regular teams can handle. But if they had Fang Heng summoned creatures with them, maybe they could actually manage? Though they didn't have much confidence in themselves, they had plenty of faith in Fang Heng. Besides, if they could clear out a B-tier insect nest, it would be a major victory for the Federation. Mr. Fang, you're this confident? My confidence is average at best, Fang Heng replied. I just want to give it a try. The positions of the 2 B-tier nests are too dangerous for us. If we can clear them, that's ideal. Fang Heng paused, then added, I've heard B-tier insect nests are extremely dangerous. If anyone doesn't want to take the risk, I won't force it. The officers quickly exchanged looks and nodded in unison. Mr. Fang, we're willing to participate. But the B-tier insect nest is extremely dangerous. If we encounter a crisis we can't handle, we'll retreat and preserve our strength. Got it. Jane felt relieved upon seeing that Fang Heng wasn't recklessly charging into danger. Just like Fang Heng said, they'd give it a shot. If they couldn't do it, they would just retreat. What else could they do? Orders out, everyone. We move out in 10 minutes. Target A779, B-tier insect nest. High in the sky, 5 transport planes sped toward the Crystal Defense Tower construction area. Colette felt anxious. He had to juggle the transportation of materials to the main battlefield, manage the 6th batch of war materials arriving from the spawns, and also coordinate the material supply for Fang Heng. Just as he had finally arranged the strategic materials from the spawns, another batch of materials was delivered at the last minute. He hadn't even had time to breathe before 4 new federal teams arrived, looking for Fang Heng. He had no idea how the Crystal Defense Tower construction was progressing. Report, sir, here's the list of materials Mr. Fang has picked up recently. Colette took the materials list and his face changed slightly. Earlier, he'd agreed to provide Fang Heng with enough weapons and ammunition, so he hadn't paid close attention. Now, seeing the list, Fang Heng had taken so much ammunition? What was he planning to do with all of this? If it weren't for the unique nature of this game world, where space passages couldn't be used, Colette might suspect Fang Heng was buying and selling materials. The planes quickly entered the high-risk area, densely packed with insect nests. To avoid being attacked by the rock-armored gunworms below, the planes climbed higher. Huh? Colette leaned forward and looked out the window, suddenly noticing something strange. When they first entered the Crystal Core construction area, the ground had been covered in large patches of gray fungal blanket. But now, there seemed to be a lot less fungal blanket. The ground was still uneven, but there were fewer signs of mutant worms. Could it be? Colette's mind raced as he suddenly recalled what Fang Heng had said about clearing out nearby insect nests. Had they cleared out the insect nests so soon? He had originally thought that clearing a few insect nests would be the limit for Fang Heng, but to clear so many so quickly? Colette quickly took out his mapping device to check the surrounding terrain. Good heavens! Within a 2-kilometer radius of the planned Crystal Tower construction area, there were no insect nests left. The western area had been cleared for a full 10 kilometers. What had once been marked red on the map as insect nest locations had mostly been cleared. Fang Heng. Colette muttered the name, a little stunned. Could this guy really be that powerful? The 4 officers accompanying the reinforcement teams also exchanged surprised looks. They had dealt with insect nests before. They had heard Boyd boasting yesterday about a very powerful young man who made clearing D-tier insect nests seem like eating and drinking. It seemed like he wasn't exaggerating after all. Could he really be that capable? While they were pondering, the transport planes quickly reached the temporary camp area, confirming safety before slowly descending. Colette and the accompanying reinforcement teams disembarked from the transport planes. Looking around, aside from the conspicuous massive rock and earth barrier, the temporary camp was nothing more than a skeletal structure. The whole area felt eerily desolate, with only 2 new soldiers standing guard. The 2 soldiers immediately saluted, Lieutenant Colette. Colette stepped forward and asked, "Where are the others?" "Report. Lieutenant Jane left 2 hours ago, gathering all teams to head to the A779 area for insect nest clearing. Only the 2 of us stayed behind to guard the camp as per orders." "What did you say? A779? Colette's expression changed instantly. A779? Wasn't that a B-tier insect nest? Had they gone mad? Had they really escalated to targeting the B-tier insect nests? What in the world was going on? Looking at the increasingly dark sky, Colette realized that there was no sign of a temporary camp even being built by the end of the day. What would they do tonight? Rely on just this rock and earth barrier for defense? He could understand if Fang Heng was crazy, but why were Boyd and the others, who had received professional training, also following him down this reckless path? Colette asked, "Have they not returned yet?" Chapter 2895, Destruction. 2 soldiers shook their heads. The B-level insect nest signal jamming was extremely strong, making it impossible to communicate, and the transport plane dared not fly overhead. The situation over there was completely unknown to them. Colette immediately became a bit anxious, nodding to the several team captains accompanying him and saying, "Get ready, we'll go assist immediately." The 4 lieutenants looked serious, nodding in acknowledgement. Understood. Soon, after unloading all the materials from the transport plane, the 4 federal teams finished preparing and immediately headed to the A799 zone to provide assistance. Colette had already prepared for the worst. If their entire army was wiped out, they would have to quickly gather personnel to break open the rock and earth barrier and, before it got too dark, rush to transfer the remaining components for the crystalline tower assembly back to the ship. In the distance, the soldiers heard gunfire and explosions. When Colette heard the sound of battle, he actually felt a bit more at ease. At least the situation hadn't reached the worst-case scenario. Gunfire meant that the team hadn't been completely wiped out yet. Climbing up a raised dirt mound, the soldiers looked out at the battlefield in the distance. Colette and the 4 lieutenants behind him changed expression. In the distance, large swarms of mutant worms were fighting fiercely against each other. Dense swarms of insects covered the creep as they continuously surged toward the federal team. Among them were even a large number of mutated elite worms and commander-level mutant worms. In front of the soldiers, rows of brown mutant worms were using their flesh and blood to fiercely block the oncoming swarm. The federal teams at the rear divided into 7 groups, clearing out sporadic plague mothers and lower-tier insect nests while slowly advancing step by step. Colette was truly shocked. It was completely different from what he had expected. Boyd's team. They were actually advancing deeper into the insect nest. The soldiers were systematically clearing the fungal carpet-covered areas using flamethrowers. Originally, the entire B-level insect nest occupied most of the area. Now, at the very center of the battlefield, the 6-meter-tall giant B-level insect nest mother could clearly be seen. In addition to this B-level insect nest mother, there were a dozen or more D-level and C-level insect nests surrounding it. The Federation's firepower output was clearly somewhat lacking, and their advance was rather difficult. Colette and the accompanying federal soldiers started to feel a heavy atmosphere. Before coming here, they had never imagined that Fang Heng and the few lieutenant teams would be able to achieve this much. Go. Help them. Colette and his 4 reinforcement teams immediately mobilized, joining the battlefield one by one. When Boyd's team saw their comrades arrive, they quickly adjusted their formation and coordinated with them. Even so, the Federation's frontal firepower was still insufficient. Seeing the fierce battle unfold, Colette led his subordinates and personally joined the battle, raising his weapon to shoot at the approaching worms. Soon, he realized something. The battlefield with the mutant worms in front of him was completely different from anything he had experienced before. The worm swarm's attack had been completely contained. They only needed to focus on the offense. Was it because of Fang Heng? Colette scanned the battlefield, searching for Fang Heng's position. What they truly lacked was effective destructive power. Damn it. At this point, if they had some long-range combat mechanical units from the spawns, it would have been a huge help. For a moment, Colette even thought that the combat machines sent from the spawns should have been sent to Fang Heng instead of the main front line. It might have had a better effect. Quick, fall back. Colette. Watch out for your right. Colette's heart skipped a beat when he heard the shout, and he immediately looked to the right. Boom. 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 From the ground, a series of sharp spikes suddenly shot out. The lickers, who had been fighting against the fungus worms on the fungal carpet, were instantly pierced through their bodies by the spikes and sent flying into the air. What the hell? What kind of mutant worm creature was that? Colette hurriedly retreated with his team to a safe distance. At this moment, Fang Heng was not deep in the worm swarm but was staying at the rear of the team, controlling the situation. Colette saw Fang Heng watching the crisis unfold, his eyes fixed on the mutant worm leader. The B-level insect nest was hard to deal with. Apart from the massive number of worms, there were also frequent appearances of high-tier commander-level mutant worms, each of which had strange special abilities that often caused great effects on the battlefield. Such as this one. The mutant worm leader had most of its body hidden beneath the creep, exposing only a small portion of its back that could be targeted, relying on massive spikes thrusting out from beneath the creep as its main form of attack. These spikes not only dealt significant piercing damage but also carried a violent poison effect. It even had a 5% mortality rate. 2 lickers were unlucky and were instantly killed by the piercing skill. Whoosh! 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 A large group of lickers, which had been preparing for an ambush, immediately charged toward the mutant worm leader. The original devouring body modification. The original devouring body transformed licker, which had a self-resurrection effect upon death, was able to fuse with stealth abilities. Due to its high cost and lack of King of Gods points, it was not fully modified. The modified lickers immediately blocked the attack path of the mutant worm leader. Bang! 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 The lickers were repeatedly knocked away by the mutant worm leader's spikes, but they quickly landed and charged back into the fray. Even if they were unlucky enough to be killed, they could quickly revive from liquid form. Soon, the mutant worm leader was trapped in place by the licker swarm. Colette and his accompanying soldiers were shocked as they watched from behind, trying to pull out their weapons and attack the mutant worm leader, only to find that most of its body was concealed beneath the creep. The exposed part of its armored back was hard to target and could absorb a lot of damage. It was troublesome. Colette gritted his teeth in frustration. He had long known that B-level insect nests were difficult to deal with, and now, seeing it firsthand, it was exactly as he had expected. Just dealing with a single mutant worm leader was proving to be incredibly challenging. Thankfully, Fang Heng summoned creatures were helping to block the attack, or the situation would have been even worse. Fang Heng, standing at the rear of the battlefield, focused his mental energy on the mutant worm leader. As he changed into his necromantic form, he slowly raised his right hand. Kai. Gray, mixed with lifeblood, swirled around Fang Heng's right palm. Boiling blood. For life forms with blood flow, this technique was extremely effective. The mutant worm leader's body froze for a moment. Kai. The same lifeblood-colored aura and gray necrotic energy swirled around the mutant worm leader's body. In addition to the ripple effects from boiling blood, the necrotic aura added corrosion and aging effects. The mutant worm leader, feeling extreme discomfort from the boiling blood, began to struggle wildly underground. Chapter 2896, Shattered. However, it was ineffective. Fang Heng's mental strength and vampire imprint had firmly locked the mutant worm leader in place. The negative effects of boiling blood had not only failed to dissipate but had instead grown even stronger. The mutant worm leader could no longer bear it and crawled out of the creep beneath the ground, writhing and thrashing wildly on the surface. The surrounding lickers immediately pounced one after another, attacking the mutant worm leader. Within moments, the leader was overwhelmed and submerged by the tide of worms. Colette's eyes widened in astonishment. He had seen the mutant worm leader act strangely, and in the blink of an eye, it was devoured by Fang Heng summoned creatures. Fang Heng. How did he manage to do this? He hadn't even seen Fang Heng in person up until now. Colette. Over there, you two go deal with that D-level insect nest. We'll handle this one, split up. Colette snapped back to his senses, glanced at Jane beside him, nodded, and then hurried his subordinates toward the D-level insect nest on the right. They continually used their weapons to eliminate the scattered plague mothers and creep worms along the way. The team quickly reached the effective range of their artifact weapons. Fire at will. Boom. Boom boom. The high-energy beam weapon's light cannon fired off powerful beams, causing chunks of blood and flesh to fall from the mother spider of the insect nest upon impact. After a minute of concentrated fire, the entire mother spider was completely destroyed. It was done. A sense of satisfaction surged in Khalid's heart as he threw aside his overheated weapon, grabbing a fresh one. Now he understood why Boyd's group consumed so many resources. During combat, there was almost no need to struggle with the mutant worm swarm. Their guns were nearly constantly aimed and fired. Once a weapon overheated, they simply discarded it and switched to a new one. Naturally, ammunition usage was frighteningly high. Next. Khalid had once been an excellent team captain, promoted over a year ago to manage the ship's logistics. Today, fighting on the front lines had awakened a long-forgotten bloodlust. Let's keep going. At this rate, they could quickly eliminate the smaller D-level insect nests around the B-level insect nest and then move forward to destroy the central, giant B-level insect nest. Khalid looked up as his team cleared out the remaining nests and prepared to find the next target. A soldier approached and whispered, "Report, Captain Khalid, our squad wasn't fully prepared for prolonged combat. The artifact weapon ammunition will run out in 10 minutes." It was over. Right when they were enjoying the battle. No more ammunition. Khalid now understood what it felt like to run out of ammo. "All right, fall back," he immediately ordered. At the same time, other squads, including Jane's, also retreated to the back. Khalid even noticed that Jane was waving at him. What did that mean? Wasn't he out of ammo too? Going back for supplies? Khalid felt puzzled and turned toward the direction Jane had signaled, his expression changing slightly. The ground in the rear of the battlefield suddenly cracked open with dense fissures. Mutant worms under Fang Hang's control emerged from the cracks, quickly occupying and guarding the area around them. The rifts rapidly merged into a single path, forming a catacomb entrance. Soon, high-tier transport robots of the Spawn tribe appeared, pushing crates full of weapon ammunition onto the battlefield. Meanwhile, Jane's squad had already anticipated this and quickly rushed over to replenish their supplies. Was this a tactic? Using a cavern in the battlefield? The risks seemed too great. Khalid was shocked. Even on the main battlefield, due to the fear of being targeted by the mutant worm artillery, supplies were usually delivered to the periphery first and then escorted to the battlefield. But Fang Hang had done it in one go, directly delivering ammunition and weapons to the battlefield. Had Fang Hang been using this method for material transport before? Khalid suddenly felt lucky. He wasn't sure what kind of luck he had, but it seemed that finding Fang Hang to help was a stroke of good fortune. Instructor Benny was indeed impressive. Other Federation squads had gone through similar material delivery scenarios, quickly completing the resupply process. As soon as the supplies were delivered, the cracks in the ground were quickly filled in. Khalid immediately instructed his team to follow and began replacing their weapons with new ammunition. "Follow me." With their weapons replenished, Khalid felt more confident. He waved his hand, leading the team forward again, joining the overall Federation team to launch a new offensive, eliminating the smaller insect nests around the central B-level mother spider. They could handle it. The further they advanced, the stronger Khalid felt this overwhelming sense of certainty. Victory was within their grasp. Other squad leaders also made the same judgment about the battlefield. They could win. Fully engaged in battle, Khalid had completely lost track of time. It wasn't until a soldier hurried up to him and whispered, "Captain, we've been fighting for an hour. The next batch of Spawn's battle materials will arrive through the teleportation passage soon. If we don't return to the rear..." Khalid stopped shooting and surveyed the entire battlefield. The D-level insect nests in the area had been mostly cleared, and the number of worms had decreased somewhat. But their output wasn't enough. At the current attack strength of their team, it would take at least 5 more hours to completely destroy the B-level insect nest. And that was under ideal conditions. Unexpected events could happen at any time during battle. He couldn't afford to stay here for that long. Moreover, the longer they delayed, the more likely problems would arise. "You go back. The task for frontline supplies is temporarily handed over to Deputy Cole." Khalid squinted his eyes, making a decision. The Spawn will soon have a batch of war machines entering the battlefield. Notify Deputy Cole to pack the latest remote combat armor, the V-70, along with energy supplies, and send them through Fang Hang's transport robot to us as soon as possible. The soldier's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this. V-70. The Spawn's large war machines were the most powerful single-target destructive weapons available in the Federation's exchange. Understood. The battle continued. Khalid waved his hand, signaling his subordinates and the 2 nearby squads to regroup and advance toward the right side where a sea-level insect nest was located. Behind the mutant worm swarm, more and more worms were emerging from various insect nests, joining the battlefield, and the area once again fell into a prolonged standoff. Chapter 2897, advancing half an hour later. As the material transportation catacombs at the rear of the battlefield cracked open again, transport robots pushed out large crates from below the catacombs. Boyd's team was resupplying ammunition when they noticed several large red crates labeled with equipment boxes nearby. They froze for a moment. What's this? Boyd felt like this thing looked somewhat familiar, and a look of surprise and excitement immediately appeared in his eyes. Turning his head, just in time, Colette and her subordinate team rushed back in retreat. Boyd asked, V-70? Colette's expression was solemn, and he nodded, signaling his subordinates to open the equipment boxes and begin assembling the large combat machinery. Damn. You got this thing? Impressive. Boyd gave Colette a thumbs up, then immediately signaled his subordinate team to stay and protect Colette's assembly team. The V-70, this massive weapon, was extremely costly, and there were very few of them. They were usually only used on the main battlefield. Yet, Colette had managed to get one here. Feng Heng also noticed the anomaly at the rear of the battlefield. This spawns large war machines? In just over 10 minutes, Colette and her subordinates completed the assembly of 2 large war machines. The massive war machines, standing 3 meters tall, relied on several mechanical arms for support. At the top, there were 4 independent, towering prisms, making the entire machine look quite bulky. If Feng Heng had to describe it, it would be like an armored tank without a cannon, with 4 prism antennas sticking out of the top, and several mechanical arms acting as legs for movement underneath. Due to its massive size, the V-70 was very easy to target. At least, it seemed somewhat clumsy and not very suited for close combat. Boom, 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 boom. The V-70 war machine powered up, its large mechanical arms lifting its body and moving swiftly toward the battlefield. Its movement speed wasn't slow. Whoosh! Focused light beam. A continuous energy beam was released from the top of the battle machine. Huh. Feng Heng's pupils constricted, a bit surprised. High intensity, long range single target attack. The focused light beam instantly left a charred mark on the ground, directly focusing on a C-tier insect nest's mother spider not far away. Zzzzz. Under the sustained focused light beam, the insect nest's mother spider was severely wounded, large chunks of charred flesh and blood falling from it. The insect swarm, enraged, gathered again, attempting to launch a counterattack, but they were completely blocked by the liquor swarm surrounding them. The V-70's mechanical single-target attack strength was incredibly high. It was designed by the Spawn to deal with armored creatures and fortresses. The attack strength of the focused light beam increased with the duration of the effect. In theory, the damage could increase by up to 300 times. However, the mechanical body was large and very vulnerable to being surrounded by the insect swarm. Its attack mode was single target, making it quite ineffective against large numbers of insect swarms. Boom. In just under a minute, the focused light beam attack caused the entire C-tier insect nest's mother spider to explode. Even the crimson crystal body covered by the fungus layer of the mother spider was scorched, leaving a big black pit. Nice job, Colette. Boyd clenched his fist, shouting, signaling his subordinates to guard the V-70 war machine as it advanced forward. Despite the many drawbacks of this machine, its single-target output was terrifying. All the Federation soldiers' squads were well trained. Seeing the situation, they immediately changed tactics, coordinating around the 2 V-70 machines. On the battlefield, the 2 V-70s played a significant role. They slowly pushed forward, destroying every insect nest's mother spider along the way. None of them held out for more than a minute. By the time they destroyed the remaining 4 C-tier insect nests, 2 focused light beams converged on the last B-tier insect nest's mother spider. The insect nest's mother spider trembled violently. Feng Heng watched as its health dropped from a trickle, then gradually decreased faster and faster, until it fell below 50%. Boom. 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 The insect nest's mother spider trembled violently. Blood and flesh continuously fell from it, quickly forming commander-level fungal worm creatures that rushed toward the V-70 war machines. A large swarm of insects surged from all directions toward the Federation Legion. The Federation soldiers were immediately alarmed. The V-70 was most vulnerable to this insect swarm tactic. Stop them. Feng Heng narrowed his eyes, focusing on the oncoming tide of insects. The final wave, huh? Boiling blood. Feng Heng activated his vampire strength to the limit, pouring all his skills onto the commander-level fungal worm creatures in front of him. Meanwhile, the liquor swarm emerged from cracks in the ground, forming a defensive line in front of the V-70, blocking the leader insect's path and entangling them in place. At the rear, the Federation soldier teams gathered in front of the V-70, forming a final human wall, continuously firing at the mutated creatures in front of them. Kill them. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion echoed across the battlefield. The V-70's focused light beam attack had only taken 5 minutes, and the soldiers were still dealing with the frenzied insect swarm. Meanwhile, the rear B-tier insect nest had already been destroyed by the V-70's focused energy beam. The player's retinas immediately displayed a series of game prompts. Ding! The player killed B-tier insect nest's mother spider, mutated leader. Player's team received 20,000 spawn contribution points and 20,000 spawn honor points, automatically distributed to each player involved in the battle. Ding! The player successfully cleared B-tier insect nest. Player received 10,000 spawn contribution points and 50,000 spawn honor points, automatically distributed to each player involved in the battle. Really, it's done? As the insect nest shattered, no new mutated worms joined the battlefield, and the creep on the ground quickly receded. Jane tossed aside the now overheated beam weapon and glanced at the mission prompt showing the B-tier insect nest was cleared. She suppressed her excitement and quickly switched to a new energy weapon, shooting at the remaining creatures still in the creep. The B-tier insect nest. It really was destroyed. This was something unimaginable before. Jane suppressed his excitement, continuing to command. It took another 10 minutes, but the remaining mutated worm creatures were cleared by the Federation team. The battle ended, and fatigue filled every player's body. They were exhausted, but also very excited. With the battle over, all the Federation squads gathered at their location to rest and regroup. A true zero-casualty result. And they had cleared a B-tier insect nest. No matter how you looked at it, this was an incredibly successful outcome. Several officers gathered together to discuss the next steps. Feng Heng, thank you for your help, Colette said, walking over to Feng Heng, his eyes full of admiration. It seemed like the victory was due to the large V-70 war machine. But everyone knew deep down that the person who truly made the V-70's terrifying combat capabilities shine was Feng Heng. Chapter 2898, Machinery. Otherwise, the Federation would have already had the ability to exchange for the V-70, and when dealing with the insect nest, the V-70 alone would not be enough. Now, Colette suddenly became very confident. Instructor Benny really had good judgment. With Feng Heng around, is it really that difficult to set up a prism defense line? In comparison, destroying a B-level insect nest seemed more like an impossible task. Long-term operations require soldiers to rest. I will leave 2 teams behind to build a temporary base and protect the construction of the prism tower, Colette said, pausing and glancing at the soldiers gathered not far away. The rest of the soldiers need to return to the ship's training pods for rest. We expect to return to the battlefield tomorrow morning and will cooperate with you to complete the mission. All right, thank you. Feng Heng nodded, his gaze focusing on the Federation war machine, the V-70, and he casually said, "This thing looks pretty good, where did you get it? We don't have such advanced products in the Federation. These were exchanged with the spawns using contribution points. These 2 war machines were originally supposed to be sent to the main battlefield, but as you might have heard, there's been quite a bit of trouble over there," Colette explained. Really? Feng Heng clicked his tongue, feeling a bit regretful. The V-70 war machine was perfect for dealing with the insect nest mother spiders. How much does it cost? Very expensive, I assume? Yes, as you said, the war machines are indeed costly. Each one requires 200,000 contribution points to exchange. Additionally, because they involve advanced technology from the spawns, they do not allow us to disassemble or reassemble them. I've heard that they have self-destruct mechanisms inside, and if dismantled, they will explode, affecting the player's honor and contribution points with the spawns. Oh, and one more thing, transferring the war machine to another world via transition costs an additional 10,000 contribution points. 210,000? Feng Heng glanced at his remaining contribution points. The price didn't seem too bad. The Federation soldiers couldn't continue fighting for long, but his zombie clones didn't have such concerns. If he could get the war machine's assistance. Forget about the B-level insect nests, handling C-level insect nests would be a breeze. How about you just sell these 2 to me? You can buy more from the spawns. Eh? Colette looked at Feng Heng, seeing that his expression didn't look like a joke, and then asked, "You want to continue?" "Yes." "All right." Colette readily agreed. As long as it helped to complete the prism tower construction mission, Colette felt it was completely fine to help. Delaying the 2 V-70s to the main battlefield wouldn't have too much impact. But if they were given to Feng Heng, the Federation doesn't allow the trade of strategic materials, but in this emergency situation, I can lend these 2 machines to you in the name of the Federation. You cannot take the war machines away from this world. Also, if the machines are damaged during the period, you'll need to compensate for them at their original price. Do you confirm? Can I? That's great. A free rental? That's fantastic. Feng Heng was very pleased with this arrangement. This world was special. Even if he wanted to take the war machines with him, he wouldn't be able to. Colette took out the control panels for the war machines from his pocket, tapped a few times on a panel, and handed it to Feng Heng. These are the control panels for the 2 war machines. I've unlocked them. You'll need to bind them again. Colette paused and continued, this is the maximum I can do within my ability, Feng Heng. I hope you can achieve something. That way, when the superiors ask, I'll have something to say. Don't worry, you've really helped a lot. I'll make sure to give you a satisfactory result. Feng Heng said, taking the control panel and walking toward the large war machine. Colette watched him, feeling a slight stir in his heart. Psychic abilities. Feng Heng stretched out his hand toward the spirit gemstone at the bottom of the Spawn's war machine, the V70. Buzz. The spirit gemstone flickered with a faint light. The Spawn's war machine was activated again, and the mechanical claws lifted its body upright. Impressive. It was evident from how easily Feng Heng controlled it remotely that his psychic abilities were definitely no small matter. Colette couldn't help but wonder. What other hidden abilities did he have? Feng Heng, the front line is in urgent need. I need to return to handle the situation, so I won't stay here any longer. By the way, there's one more thing to remind you. The V70 has high energy consumption, and the energy must be replenished back at the ship. It will take at least 5 hours to recharge. No problem, thanks. You're welcome. If you run into any trouble, contact us immediately. Alright. Feng Heng waved his hand, watching Colette and the soldiers board the transport ship as they left. The remaining 2 Federation team captains looked at Feng Heng. Mr. Feng Heng, is there anything you need our assistance with? Thanks, but no need. According to Colette, you 2 are responsible for the camp's construction. I'll go clear out a few lower-tier insect nests nearby. Understood. The 2 officers, who were not familiar with Feng Heng and were both rather silent types, nodded in response and signaled their subordinates to return to the camp to carry out the construction tasks. Feng Heng turned around, lightly tapping his toes to quickly leap onto the V70's shoulder, opening the survey instrument to check, and immediately began controlling the V70 toward the next sea-level insect nest. Time to grind. The D-level insect nests were no longer interesting. Since he had a high-output V70, he would just focus on grinding sea-level insect nests. Get as many as possible. The next day, Colette worked until 2:30 a.m. delivering the last batch of materials to the front line, and then provided Feng Heng with 4 additional V70 war machines. Only then did he inject a potion and fall into a deep sleep. When he woke up, it was just dawn. After finishing the first round of material transportation, he looked at the time and realized it was already close to noon. At that moment, he finally remembered Feng Heng. Considering how quickly he had cleared the insect nests yesterday, and with 6 V70 war machines to assist, he should be able to clear even more insect nests. Just as he was about to call her subordinates to ask, he heard the voices of soldiers at the entrance of the ship's warehouse. Captain Gorn. Vice Captain Gorn had arrived. Colette's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately went to greet him. Captain, you're here. Gorn's expression was not very good. Upon seeing Colette, he asked, what's going on? Why are half of the war machines that were supposed to be sent to the front line missing? Where are the rest? What happened? Colette had always been reliable in handling the materials, so Gorn wasn't too worried about that. But something went wrong yesterday. Since Colette was personally promoted by Gorn, he was more concerned. Some urgent situations came up, Captain. I have already reported this to Captain Giselle in advance. Perhaps you haven't had the chance to review it yet. Gorn immediately realized something and asked, is it the urgent mission from Feng Heng? Did you give the war machines to him? Chapter 2899, Clean. Yes, they over there needed the V70 war machines more. Gorn said in a deep voice, the front line's main battlefield lacked war machines, and the officers of those 2 regiments had already expressed a lot of grievances. I understand, Captain. Please look at the big screen. Colette had already prepared. He gestured for his subordinate staff member to display the survey map on the big screen. Yesterday, Feng Heng cleared a large area of insect nests, including a B-level insect nest. This achievement was enough to demonstrate his decisiveness. Oh? Gorn saw the marked area on the map and, just as Colette had expected, his eyes showed signs of surprise. Seeing this, Colette felt a bit relieved. At least the captain would have something to say on his behalf. Colette turned back to the big screen, ready to explain. That was... What? Originally, Colette had only wanted to showcase the success of clearing the B-level insect nest from last night. However, to his surprise, according to the current map displayed, except for the solitary B-level insect nest, there were no other red marks within a 10-kilometer radius centered on the prism tower Feng Heng had predicted to build. This meant that all the insect nests within 10 kilometers had been cleared. Colette was stunned for a moment. Good grief. In just about 12 hours since last night, what had they done? Colette had generously lent Fang Heng 4 additional V-70 war machines, hoping he could clear more insect nests to solidify the foundation for the subsequent construction of the Prism defensive facilities. He never expected the guy to work this hard. Such terrifying combat strength took him by surprise. Originally, there were at least 100 sea-level and D-level insect nests scattered across the area. Gorn's face grew serious. The final construction task for the Prism defensive facility was supposed to be his responsibility, and he knew the mission's difficulty well. He had conducted several pre-battle evaluations, and the surrounding environment of the construction site was extremely harsh, with more than 200 insect nests of various sizes, in addition to the 2 nearby B-level insect nest clusters. Now, only one remained? Wait. Hold on. Gorn seemed to notice something and instinctively rubbed his eyes. While observing the map, he saw that the light spot representing the last B-level insect nest flickered a few times before completely dimming. What the hell? It's gone? The last B-level insect nest had been dealt with as well? Gorn and Colette looked at each other in silence. Mr. Fang was really going all out. Boyd and his group of players thought the same. They had been running around the petri dish all night, and when they returned to the Prism setup area the next morning, they saw that the sea-level insect nests around the camp had been nearly cleared. So, the federal team split into smaller groups, expanding outward to clear the remaining D-level insect nests. Then, they went to work. It took over 3 hours to clear all the lower-tier insect nests within 10 kilometers of the Prism setup area, and under Fang Heng's lead, they launched an attack on the last B-level insect nest. 2 hours later, the B-level insect nest mother body exploded once again in front of the players with a boom. Done. When they destroyed the B-level insect nest mother body for the first time, the soldiers were excited beyond measure, but by the second time, though still thrilled, they seemed to have gotten used to it. Hey, B-level insect nest? No big deal. The reason they felt this way. Jane couldn't help but turn around and look at Fang Heng, who was standing on the shoulder of a V-70 war machine. Fang Heng's mouth curved into a slight smile. He was still grateful to Colette. Not only had Colette not tried to trip him up, but during the early morning hours, he had sent him 4 additional V-70s. With a heavy fire support, clearing the insect nest areas had become much easier. Fang Heng glanced down at the game prompt. Ding. The player's current honor level, Assault Class, A, Sequence Level, 6. The player's team, 271 Galaxy, Humanity. The player's current team honor level, inferior to allied races, S. After grinding for 2 days, his honor level had directly increased by 3 full sequences. Although all the insect nests within 10 kilometers had been cleared, the V-70 war machines still had remaining energy. He could continue grinding. With the insect nests within 10 kilometers finished, he could go for those farther away. As for which direction to head, the south area was mostly scattered D-level insect nests, with a few sea-level insect nests mixed in. The speed would be too slow there. The real area worth clearing was to the north. It was closer to the mutant worm insect swarm gathering area and had more sea-level insect nests. Additionally, if the Crystal Defense Tower's construction was completed and it entered Tier 2, the threat would likely come from that direction. Fang Heng also checked the progress of the current Prism setup. The first stage was 55% completed. If everything went smoothly, he expected to finish by 11 p.m. tonight. There was still time. Then, he would push eastward. That direction had higher level and more concentrated insect nests, which was better suited for grinding. While earning mission contribution points, he could also level up his honor. Kai. The liquor swarm once again sank into the ground and quickly spread toward the next sea-level insect nest. A few Federation officers watched the war machines spread outward toward the battlefront, exchanging glances, their faces showing a hint of bitterness. It seemed like Mr. Fang was still planning to continue. But they couldn't take it anymore. After a whole morning of high-intensity combat, they had accumulated quite a lot of toxins and needed to return to the ship for some rest. Forcing themselves to continue would only accumulate more toxins and take longer to recover. What a shame. So many opportunities to earn merit, but they couldn't seize them. Night fell. At the front line, left side of the battlefield in Area 2000, elite Federation soldiers gathered here. Due to encountering insect swarms layer by layer during the frontal advance, the Federation had set up defenses at the front line. They weren't aiming to attack but to hold the area, buying more time for the frontline defense zone by depleting the insect swarm. What's that? On a segment of the front line, Officer Keno suddenly noticed something unusual. There was chaos in the defensive line formed by the rock-armored gun worm. Keno took the tactical binoculars from one of his subordinates and looked toward the area of chaos in the insect swarm. He saw cracks suddenly appearing on the ground covered by the swarm, and through the rifts, a type of brown spiny mutant worm body emerged. Keno's heart skipped a beat. Mutant worms? He had seen this type of creature before. Not long ago, something similar had broken through the ground, and transport robots had delivered weapons to them from the catacombs. What was it doing here on the battlefield? Chapter 2900, Opportunity to Keno's surprise. The mutant worm body was extremely ferocious in battle, immediately charging toward the nearby mutant worm creatures and launching a fierce attack. Keno suddenly noticed that the distant mutant worm formation, which had been set up for long-range attacks, was thrown into chaos. Now was the perfect opportunity to attack. However, these mutant worms were strange, and he had received orders to hold the position. Report. Captain, we've spotted high-tier war machines from the spawns approaching from the rear. Keno, puzzled, heard his subordinate report and immediately turned around to look. In the distance, 6 V-70 war machines were slowly advancing toward the defensive lines they had set up. What's going on? V-70? Were they here to reinforce them? He hadn't heard anything about that. Keno raised his binoculars again to observe the 6 V-70 war machines, frowning repeatedly. What a surprise. The V-70 wasn't suitable for solo combat, and it was expensive. Usually, it was used in coordination with a whole team for battle. But none of these V-70 machines had a single soldier accompanying them for protection? Upon closer inspection, he saw that one of the V-70s had a young man sitting on its shoulder. Fang Heng? Yes, that's right, it was Fang Heng. Keno remembered that during the last supply delivery, it was Fang Heng who made him sign the receipt. So these V-70 war machines were supplies he had delivered? This was how they were delivered? But what was up with these mutant worms? Keno's mind was full of questions. He dared not make any rash moves, especially in the nighttime environment, where it was easy to be ambushed by the swarm of insects. He simply directed his subordinates to continue scattering their surveillance and carrying out long-range attacks to reduce the number of mutant worms within a certain range. After some time, the 6 large spawn war machines rapidly reached the battlefield. Just as Keno was about to approach and inquire, he realized that the large spawn war machines showed no signs of stopping, instead heading straight for the battlefield area. They continued advancing until they stepped onto the creep zone. Buzz. Buzz. Keno suddenly realized that the ground beneath his feet was vibrating. This vibration wasn't solely caused by the movement of the large spawn war machines. Turning his head, he saw that even more lickers were emerging from the battlefield through the gaps in the creep zone. The insect swarm split into 2 groups, one heading toward the large spawn war machines, surrounding and protecting them, while the remaining lickers rushed toward the mutant worm lines, launching a brutal assault. Under the protection of the insect swarm, the 6 spawn war machines became like moving fortresses, slowly bypassing the defensive lines set by the Federation soldiers and gradually advancing deeper into the creep zone. Whoosh! 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 Upon entering the light beam range, focused beams of light shot out from the central cannons of the V-70 war machines, locking onto a D-level insect nest. Boom! The focused attack lasted no more than 10 seconds, and the entire D-level insect nest mother body was blown apart in front of the Federation elites. The V-70 continued searching for the next target. Every plague mother and insect nest in the area that stood in their way exploded under the focused light beams. The lickers surged into the mutant worm swarm, slaughtering indiscriminately to clear path for the V-70 war machines. Keno watched in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. A Federation counterattack? But he hadn't received any prior notice. The 6 V-70 war machines continued to advance into the insect nest, moving slowly but steadily. Due to the overwhelming number of insect swarms, the lickers alone couldn't effectively clear the area, and their forward movement was quickly slowed. Keno frowned deeply. It was the perfect time to attack. If he went now, he could assist Fang Heng's team in pushing forward more effectively. However, the risk was too great. But the orders from his superiors were to hold the position. And ahead of them was a B-level insect nest. Once they ventured deeper into the creep zone, a continuous wave of insect swarms would come from all directions, and they could very well be surrounded by the enemy. Report to the command post immediately, hurry. Yes. Keno waved to his team. Prepare for battle. Understood. In just 5 minutes, Fang Heng and his insect swarm and spawn machines had advanced several hundred meters into the dangerous zone of the insect nest. Fang Heng noticed the defensive lines set by the Federation team in the rear but gave it little thought. After all, it was all about grinding. Having the Federation's help didn't make much of a difference. Ding! The player's zombie clone, Vine Form, has completed the construction of the Prism Defense Tower. Ding! The player's mission, Local Prism Mutant Worm Purification Network, Tier 1 stage completed. Please proceed with Tier 2 of the mission. Ding! Completing the mission early will earn additional rewards, personal honor and merit rewards. Fang Heng's eyes brightened upon seeing the game prompt. So soon? He had completed the task more than 3 hours ahead of schedule. Not only that, But completing the mission early would also grant him extra rewards. Nice. Better hurry back and complete the second stage. Moreover, after a day of consumption, the V70's energy reserves were running low. Since that's the case, might as well grind out another wave before heading back. Feng Heng raised his hands, gathering energy in front of him. Whoosh! The Book of the Dead appeared in front of him. After reaching the god-level threshold, necromancy fused with blood power. Previously, after attaining god-level necromancy, Feng Heng had learned some demigod-level high-tier spells from the Undead Council, ancient beings that had lived for thousands of years. All these spells consumed immense mental strength and had long cool-down times. Most of them were area effect spells. They required a significant amount of mental strength. With the fusion of god-level necromancy and blood form enhancements, the form of his undead skills had undergone special changes. A dark red ripple of blood energy mixed with the power of the undead gathered around Feng Heng. Secret technique blood swamp. His mental strength quickly gathered, rapidly condensing and injecting into the levitating Book of the Dead before him. Not far behind Feng Heng, Keno and the Federation soldiers, who had been holding their defensive line, watched as the 6 V70 war machines, trapped in a creep, were surrounded by the insect swarm. The number of mutant worms was terrifying. Feng Heng summoned creatures and war machines were indeed powerful, but they couldn't clear the insect swarm quickly, and their forward momentum was soon halted. Were they trapped? Keno signaled his subordinates to move forward past the defensive line, slowly getting closer while maintaining safety and trying to help clear the insect swarm that had gathered around Feng Heng's rear. Huh? What's that? Suddenly, Keno sensed an unusual, cold aura. The aura was coming from Feng Heng. At this moment, the battlefield was filled with an overwhelming stench, and Keno couldn't tell exactly what kind of aura Feng Heng was using, but he could feel a tremendous surge of power emanating from the front. Feng Heng's eyes glowed with two blood-red lights. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Blood and severed limbs slowly gathered on the ground covered by the creep, forming slow-moving blood-colored vortexes. Chapter 2901, Blood Swamp. The vortex gradually condensed and slowly rotated while expanding outward, eventually forming a large disk with a diameter of more than 20 meters. The creep terrain was covered by a blood-red vortex. 12 blood-red disks continuously rotated around Feng Heng and the war machines in the outer circle. Any mutant worms that touched the blood-red disks were silently consumed and integrated into the blood-red disks, becoming part of it. The blood swamp was eerily silent, yet it crazily devoured the lives of the surrounding mutant worms. Even commander-level mutant worms. Kano watched the scene unfold on the battlefield, his eyes showing a hint of fear. He had personally seen a commander-level creep worm enter the blood-red disc, struggling desperately to escape its range. However, countless blood-red hands reached out from the disc, grabbing the mutant worm and pulling it toward the center of the disc. These blood-red hands, seemingly ordinary, had some sort of enhanced corrosion and weakness effect. Once they grabbed a creep worm, they left a deep blood-red handprint indentation on its body. After a brief struggle, the commander-level creep worm was pulled into the blood-red disc and disappeared without a trace. The 12 giant blood-red discs rolled on the battlefield, devouring the mutant worm swarm that surged from all directions. That guy. Kano raised his head, looking at Feng Heng, who was standing on the shoulder of a mechanical spawn, casting spells from a distance. A large-scale blood magic skill? Was he a vampire? At some point, Keno's back was already soaked in a cold sweat. The area covered by the blood swamp attack swallowed the mutant worm swarms in chunks, clearing a path for the V70 war machines to advance. 6 V70 war machines slowly moved forward toward the B-level insect nest. Beside him, a soldier swallowed nervously and asked in a low voice, "Captain, what should we do?" "Take a small squad and follow them to take a look. The rest stay and defend the line. Make sure the line is secure." "Yes." Keno made a quick decision, assembling a 20-man elite squad to follow Feng Heng. They might not be able to help in this intense battle, but at least they could follow and observe. Thanks to the blood swamp skill reducing the interference of the mutant worm swarm, the V70's movement speed increased significantly. In a short while, the towering B-level insect nest mother body was clearly visible ahead. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Once within attack range, the 6 V70 mechanical war machines simultaneously fired concentrated energy light beams, focusing their fire on the B-level insect nest mother spider. The mother spider took damage, and the entire worm swarm was once again provoked, charging toward the V70 war machines. However, it was futile. No matter how many worms came, they were all devoured by the blood swamp. At this point, Feng Heng was also beginning to sweat heavily. Even though his mental strength had reached a certain level, maintaining the blood swamp for an extended period was pushing him to his limits. Just a little longer. Feng Heng fixed his gaze on the B-level insect nest mother spider ahead. It was coming. Once the B-level insect nest mother spider's HP dropped below 50%, it would enter phase 2. Suddenly, large chunks of blood meat fell from the mother spider. The blood meat quickly gathered on the ground, forming commander-level mutant worms. Led by the commander-level mutant worms, a powerful counterattack was mounted, and they charged toward the war machines once again. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Fang Hang condensed all of his mental strength and poured it into the Book of the Dead. Gulp. Gulp. Countless dense bubbles began to rise from the silent blood swamp. Boom. Bang. Bang. With the mental strength fueling it, the blood swamp quickly surged and boiled, suddenly bursting like a fountain, forming a vast sea of blood in front of Fang Hang. Boom. The sea of blood surged toward the incoming commander-level mutant worm swarm like a tidal wave. It was like a tsunami. The blood sea, enhanced with corrosion, aging, and various undead effects, quickly overwhelmed a large portion of the worm swarm. After a moment, the blood tide receded. The ground, once covered with creep terrain, now presented a scorched brown color, with sizzling sounds emanating from the remaining blood as it burned away. After a baptism by the blood tide, the normal worms had all been wiped out, leaving only a few heavily injured commander-level mutant worms still struggling on the ground. The liquor swarm had switched to their undead form and rapidly pounced on the remaining commander-level mutant worms, tearing them apart. In the rear of the battlefield, Keno and his elite squad had just arrived and witnessed the area ahead being cleared of the worms, leaving a vacuum zone. They were left speechless by the sight. During the release of the skill, the 6v70 war machines had been focusing energy light beams on the B-level insect nest mother spider for more than 3 minutes. The damage had increased by more than 10 times. Bang. 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 The commander-level mutant worm leaders were not completely killed by the liquor swarm yet, but the B-level insect nest had already exploded before the soldiers' eyes. The soldiers immediately hit the ground. Chunks of blood meat flew in all directions. Ding! The player killed the B-level insect nest mother spider, mutated leader. The player gains 10,000 spawn contribution points and 10,000 spawn honor points. Ding! The player successfully cleared the B-level insect nest. The player gains 50,000 spawn contribution points and 50,000 spawn honor points. Fang Hang glanced at the game prompt. Done. With no Federation involvement in the kill, he took all the rewards for himself. Fang Hang suddenly felt something in his sea of consciousness. He looked up and gazed toward the front of the battlefield. An abnormal ripple emanated from the distance. It was the seed of Ouroboros sensing. The game prompt triggered immediately. Ding! The player triggers the mission. The traces of the seed of Ouroboros. Mission name: The Traces of the Seed of Ouroboros. Mission difficulty: SSS. Mission description: You have sensed the aura of the seed of Ouroboros in a certain world. Please try to locate the source of the aura and investigate. Mission requirements: Locate the source of the aura. Fang Hang looked ahead. According to the map displayed on the surveying instrument, the source of the aura was located at the central area of the insect nest. Deeper within, there were even stronger A-level and S-level insect nests. Just as I thought, it's the seed of Ouroboros. Fang Hang murmured to himself before retracting his gaze. Although the B-tier insect nest had been cleared, there were still many lower-level D-tier and C-tier insect nests remaining. Unfortunately, the energy of the mechanical war machines had dropped to less than 3%. It was impossible to continue at this point. Lacking the spawns war machines, relying solely on the liquor swarm to clear the insect nest was too slow. He decided to retreat and head back to activate the second-tier defense of the prism. Protected by the swarm, the mechanical war machines began to retreat toward the rear of the battlefield. Keno and his subordinates looked up just in time to see the war machines not clearing the remaining lower-tier insect nest mother spiders but instead quickly retreating toward the rear. What did this mean? Were they retreating? Chapter 2902, Nothing Wrong No. They had already cleared the biggest boss and left the smaller ones unfinished? Keno paused for a moment, then didn't dare to stay any longer, signaling the player team to immediately retreat to the rear defensive line. Soon, with the large war machine leaving the battlefield, the remaining lickers quickly disengaged from the battle and burrowed back into the ground cracks, disappearing, leaving behind the still confused Federation soldiers. The entire battle lasted no more than half an hour, and Fang Hang and the swarm disappeared once again. Keno and a group of soldiers watched the scattered insect nests in the distance, feeling like they were dreaming. No matter what had just happened, the swarm had suffered heavy losses. Now was their best opportunity for an attack. Immediately report the details to the captain and organize personnel to prepare for the offensive. Yes. 20 minutes later, Fang Hang controlled the V-70 war machine to quickly return to the Crystal Tower construction area. Near the high vertical rock and soil barrier, the Federation team had already completed the temporary camp, with Boyd's dozen or so subordinates standing guard outside. When the soldiers saw Fang Hang returning with a war machine, They all nodded in greeting. Fang Heng controlled the spawn's transport robot to dismantle the war machine and pack it up to be sent back to the ship for recharging. Then, he once again used spatial abilities to enter the inner area covered by rock and soil. At this point, the prism defense tower had already been completed. In the center stood a 5-meter-tall prism structure, surrounded by a series of branching prisms, ultimately forming a complete prism cluster. At least at first glance, it didn't seem to possess any effective offensive capability. Fang Heng tried controlling the nearby zombie clones to place the stored energy into the prism structure. Soon, after the energy was injected, the prism began to activate, emitting a faint blue glow. Ding! The player has completed Tier 1 prism tower construction. Ding! The player needs to enter Phase 2. The second-tier prism tower will officially be activated and constructed with the surrounding prisms. The ripple released during construction will likely cause the swarm to become agitated. Ding! The player should beware of swarm attacks during this tier. If the prism tower is damaged during the second-tier process, the mission will fail by default. Immediately connect. Buzz. After a faint tremor, the prism stabilized again, emitting a faint blue ripple glow. Ding! The player has entered the second tier of the crystal tower. The tower absorbs energy and links with other domain crystal towers to build the defense network. Ding! Current construction completion rate, 0.2%. It seemed they would have to wait a little longer. Fang Heng withdrew his gaze from the prism tower. The surrounding insect nests had already been cleared, and he estimated that they wouldn't encounter any intense swarm attacks. For safety, he decided to leave a portion of the lickers to guard the prism and sent the rest to clear more scattered D-level insect nests to earn honor and contribution points. However, the construction efficiency was a bit slow. Why was it still only at 0.2%? Buzz. Fang Heng looked up at the top of the prism structure, noticing that the energy from the prism wasn't being released effectively. The energy ripples were quickly accumulating at the top of the rock and soil barrier. After more than 10 minutes, a blue energy ball had gathered at the top of the barrier. Boom. The energy reached the limit of what the barrier could withstand, and the entire rock and soil-covered dome exploded in an instant. The energy released from the prism tower spilled out through the breach. Fang Heng frowned. It seemed that the outer rock and soil barrier had hindered the efficiency of the prism network's construction. Oh well. Since the prism tower was already completed, they no longer needed the barrier to conceal things. Boom. Fang Heng lightly raised his hand, and the outer rock and soil barriers shattered. A large number of zombie clones quickly formed into licker shapes, using stealth skills to burrow into the ground and disappear. Looking again, the construction speed of the prism tower's energy defense network had greatly increased. The explosion from the rock and soil area quickly attracted the attention of the Federation soldiers in the camp. What's going on? Boyd, who had just been resting, heard the explosions outside and hurriedly led people out to investigate. Then they saw the shattered rock and soil barrier and a towering prism tower inside. What? The prism tower? When had the prism tower been completed? Looking closer, Boyd's heart tightened. Not good. The prism tower had already entered the second-tier construction. Damn it. How had it progressed so quickly? This was too sudden. The second-tier construction would cause violent energy ripples, which would attract a large number of swarms. Boyd was greatly alarmed and immediately said, "Notify Colette, we need reinforcements. The sooner, the better." Fang Heng watched the Federation soldiers, who were now on high alert, and couldn't help but shrug. Was it really necessary to be this excited? Mr. Fang. Boyd and two other squad officers hurried over to Fang Heng and anxiously asked, "Has your prism tower been completed?" "It's already in the second tier?" "Yes." Boyd and the three of them were a little unsure of what to say after hearing Fang Heng's calm response. Should they complain about Mr. Fang's speed in completing the prism tower? They hadn't been prepared at all. Fang Heng, seeing the tension in their spirits, reassured them, "Don't worry, the surrounding insect nests have already been cleared, so even if some swarm is attracted, it won't be too many." Hearing Fang Heng's words, they looked at each other and fell silent again. Upon careful thought, it seemed Mr. Fang had a point. Since the surrounding swarms had been dealt with, what was there to be afraid of? Besides, wasn't Mr. Fang personally guarding it? He was someone who could solo B-level insect nests. Still, setting up the prism tower was too important. Boyd and the officers couldn't afford to be as relaxed as Fang Heng. They immediately began organizing teams to stay on alert and prepare for battle. Fang Heng thought the officers were too cautious, so he let them set up defenses while he alone went to control the licker group to continue clearing insect nests further west to earn points. After a while, two transport aircraft arrived. The transport planes circled twice before landing quickly. Reinforcements had arrived so quickly? Seeing the people disembark from the ship, Fang Heng's eyelids twitched. In addition to Colette, there was a familiar face. He remembered meeting him once on Captain Zoran's ship. He seemed to be from the inspection department. Fang Heng, good to see you again. Shylock approached Fang Heng and said, "This is Emery, the chief inspector, in charge of investigating the disappearance of the mutant worm cocoons." Fang Heng looked at the big guy standing behind Shylock. "We recently discovered some clues regarding the disappearance of the mutant worm cocoons, and we'd like you to assist with the investigation." Chapter 2903, Investigation Stolen Cocoon? Does it have anything to do with me? Fang Heng squinted his eyes, and several thoughts quickly flashed through his mind. The inspection department's investigation? Could they have traced it back to him? No. Fang Heng was confident that he had done everything cleanly. The theft of the seed of Ouroboros cocoon should not have been exposed. Emery noticed the anomaly in Fang Heng and stared at him intently, asking, "Fang Heng, what are you thinking about?" Colette stepped forward and positioned himself in front of Fang Heng. "Both of you said you came to speak with Mr. Fang Heng to understand some things, that's why I brought you here. If you're trying to take him away, that would be too much." Shylock immediately added, "The inspection department has the right to invite anyone for an investigation. Without any evidence, all you can do is invite an investigation. Moreover, Mr. Fang Heng is on an important mission from our military department, and he has every reason to refuse your investigation." Colette still stood firmly in front of Fang Heng, not giving an inch, saying, "Fang Heng, you don't have to pay attention to them." Fang Heng shrugged and said, "You heard it. I'm busy." Fang Heng. Emery condensed his gaze on Fang Heng for a moment, then said solemnly, "The cocoon theft is a major incident. The Federation Parliament is paying close attention to it. There are some suspicions surrounding you. We hope you can cooperate with the investigation and clear your name as soon as possible." Before Fang Heng could respond, Colette stepped in and said, "Enough, Mr. Fang Heng is someone our military department invited. I don't care what suspicions you have, if you have no evidence, please leave immediately. If you continue to disturb Mr. Fang Heng's rest and ruin the Star Map project, not only you two, but even your entire inspection department will bear the responsibility." It seemed that the voices had gotten loud, and not far away, several officers from the military department, along with their soldiers, gathered and stood behind Colette, looking ready to act. Emery furrowed his brows. The order to bring Fang Heng in for questioning had been approved by the Minister of the Inspection Department. He initially thought it wouldn't be troublesome, but now he didn't expect the military to react this strongly, protecting Fang Heng like this. It had been the same with Captain Zoran earlier and now with Colette. What kind of charm did this guy have? However, perhaps this could be used to his advantage. "I'm not interested in any talk with the inspection department, and I've never seen any stolen cocoon." Fang Heng waved his hand, too lazy to continue the conversation, and turned to leave. "If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way." Emery watched Fang Heng walk away without paying him any mind and coldly said, "Fang Heng, if you're unwilling to cooperate, don't blame us for taking necessary actions." Seeing that Fang Heng had ignored him and was leaving, Emery's face showed a barely noticeable smile. Emery looked at Colette and said, "Lieutenant Colette, you just said Mr. Fang Heng is very important to your mission?" Colette sensed a dangerous aura emanating from Emery. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing. We still have business to handle, so we won't disturb you further." Colette watched as the people from the inspection department boarded their transport and left. However, he still felt uneasy inside. Was the inspection department scheming something in the shadows? Wait a minute. What was that? As he was pondering how to send off the people from the inspection department, Colette suddenly turned around and noticed the Prism Energy Defense Tower not far away. His eyelid twitched involuntarily, and he felt like he had seen a ghost. What the hell? Wasn't that the Prism Defense Tower? It's already completed? When did this happen? Colette. Jane and the others had seen the tense standoff between Colette and the inspection department. Now that the inspection department had left, they finally had time to ask quietly, "What's going on?" "It's nothing. You all know the inspection department, they're always causing trouble for no reason." Colette felt that these details weren't important and hurried toward the Prism Tower, asking, "What's going on with the Prism Tower? When was it completed? Why has it already entered Phase 2? Why haven't I received any reports?" Jane thought that Colette had come because they had sent an urgent request regarding the Prism Tower, but now it seemed not to be the case. It just entered Phase 2 recently. We didn't expect Fang Heng to finish constructing the Prism Defense Tower so quickly. By the time we realized it, it had already entered Phase 2. We immediately sent a message to the ship. Damn it." Colette's face changed drastically upon hearing this, and 2 beads of sweat slid down his cheeks. They were in big trouble. Boyd and the others saw Colette's reaction and exchanged confused looks. "Colette, our camp's defenses aren't weak, and the nearby insect swarm has been mostly cleared. Fang Heng even left a batch of summoned creatures to protect it. The situation shouldn't be that serious. It's not just about Phase 2, Colette said in a deep voice. You don't understand the hidden dangers behind it. Colette realized that he had no reason to blame Jane and the others. What he regretted most was not explaining this detail when Fang Heng had accepted the mission. He had assumed that Fang Heng had been dealing with insect nests all along, and it would take him a day and night to finish reading all the construction manuals. But who would have thought that Fang Heng hadn't shown any sign of preparing to build the prism, and then, out of nowhere, the prism defense tower was suddenly completed as if by magic. Colette, what's going on? Colette said in a low voice, once the first stage of the prism tower is completed, once it enters Tier 2, it will link with other prism towers, and the subsequent third and fourth stages will be continuous. Boyd and the other officers still didn't realize the seriousness of the problem. They looked at each other and asked, so, what happens next? Phase 2 is fine for now, but once it enters the third phase, the entire defense network will operate in unison, and the defensive crystal arrays will resonate, causing violent energy fluctuations. The resulting waves will be dozens of times stronger than now. We estimate that 10 times the number of insect swarms will be attracted, and the swarms will not only attack this prism tower but also impact the other prism towers. Boyd and the others immediately understood, and their expressions changed. No wonder Colette was so anxious. There were 6 prism towers in total. The first 5 had been set up, but since Fang Heng's was the last one, as soon as it entered Phase 2, all the towers would immediately enter Phase 3 and resonate. The insect swarms would be at their peak. At that point, all the prism towers would be under the constant attack of the insect swarms. So, they were racing against time with the insect swarms. Originally, this tower was the most vulnerable, but with Fang Heng's help, it had become the safest. But what about the other towers? They needed to mobilize a large number of Federation soldiers to defend against the insect swarm's attack. I'll report this to the captain immediately. You all stay here to guard the prism and remain on standby. Chapter 2904, Construction. The main battlefield front. Did you just say who? Fang Heng? Jisoo had been staying on the main battlefield, fighting alongside the soldiers at the front line against the insect nest. He hadn't had time to review and approve some reports submitted by Colette earlier. Upon suddenly hearing news about Fang Heng appearing on the side battlefield, he was momentarily confused. Strange. Fang Heng? Wasn't he helping build the prism tower? Why would he be there? Captain, not long ago, Fang Heng controlled summoned creatures and appeared on the side battlefield. He teamed up with the V-70 advanced war machine to eliminate a B-level insect nest mother spider, but it's strange that Fang Heng left in a hurry without fully cleaning up the rest of the insect nest mother spider. He might have encountered some unforeseen situation. Inside the tent, several high-ranking Federation Army officers were also puzzled. Fang Heng? Who was that? So powerful? He actually destroyed a B-level insect nest mother spider? Where did he get such high-tier war machines from? Also, since the most troublesome B-level insect nest mother spider had already been dealt with, why were the surrounding lower-level insect nests still left? Everyone felt like their minds were filled with question marks. Captain Jisoo asked, any updates from Colette? Captain. A soldier rushed in and reported, just received an urgent message from Colette. The prism tower was completed in half an hour, and they are currently linking the second tier. It is expected to be completed in 1 hour. What the hell? So fast? Suddenly, the entire tent was in an uproar. This was too fast. There were 6 prism towers in total, built around the central SS-level insect nest perimeter. The Federation planned to use the latest technology from the spawns to break through the spatial barrier and perform remote positioning-style rituals to eliminate the SS-level insect nest. The first 5 prism towers were already set up. Now, they just needed the last one, which was assigned to Fang Heng to build. They never expected Fang Heng to finish so quickly. And he even directly started the second tier? What the hell was Colette doing? Didn't he know that after the second tier was finished, it would directly enter the third stage? Shouldn't he have informed them in advance? Immediately arrange for people to retreat from the front line and bring reinforcements. Also, tell Colette to come back and report to me in person. Yes. The soldier rushed off to deliver the new orders. The senior military officials of the Federation whispered for a moment, and one officer said, Captain, we have 1 hour before the third stage begins. We should immediately organize people to go to each prism tower region for defense. The time is tight, but it's still manageable. The problem might be with Charlene. Jisoo nodded and looked worried. He wasn't concerned about Fang Heng. With Fang Heng's abilities, if he could already deal with the entire B-level insect nest, defending the prism tower area wouldn't be a problem. They should immediately send soldiers to protect the remaining 5 prism towers. Though it was urgent, they could still catch up. But Charlene's situation was already precarious, And if the insect swarm suddenly received a strong stimulus and caused violent fluctuations, she might not be able to hold out. No. Definitely couldn't hold them off. So, they would need support from the front line to help alleviate the pressure. Find a way to contact Charlene and let her know that the Prism Defense Positioning Network has been completed. We'll enter the third stage in 1 hour. She must hold off the insect swarm and buy us some time. Jisoo paused and then said seriously, anything else can be sacrificed, but we must stop that SS-level queen bug. Yes, understood. Another soldier rushed in. Report. Captain. Captain Jisoo turned around and looked at the newcomer, asking, what's the matter? It's a message from the inspection department. They say that the crystal worm encountered some problems during transportation, and they need Fang Hang's help to investigate. Tell them to get lost. Jisoo's veins bulged as he shouted angrily. He was under tremendous pressure, and at this moment, the inspection department was coming to cause trouble. Who would protect the Prism Towers without Fang Hang? Let those office-bound bureaucrats handle it. Ridiculous. Jisoo took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. Ignore the inspection department, leave them be. Also, have the team stationed here cooperate with Fang Hang's actions and ensure the defense of Prism number 6. Yes, understood. Report. Another soldier came rushing in and said, Captain, it seems that the insect swarm has been greatly stimulated by the Prism device and is starting to gather. They may launch an attack on the front line. Jisoo narrowed his eyes, a sharp glint flashing in them. The day of the final battle. He hadn't expected it to come so quickly. Fine. A quick resolution. Immediately inform Captain Gorn to activate the ship and join the front-line war. Yes, understood. Fang Hang hadn't yet realized that the activation of the second-tier Prism defense net had caused so much pressure on the Federation military. It was expected that the second tier would be completed in about 1 hour. He decided not to log off and rest. He would wait for an hour and then assess the situation. Fang Hang returned to the ship, entered the main ship area, and logged into the spawn system to check his personal information. Ding. The player's current honor level, Private, B, Sequence level, 9, Players Team, 271 Galaxy, Humanity, the player's current team honor level, Inferior Allied Race, S. Ding. The player's personal honor level has reached the command rank sequence, he had leveled up by 3 ranks. Finally, he had shaken off the soldier rank. Fang Hang opened the personal exchange column to check. The available items had increased from just over 10 pages to more than 500. He found it. The Black Fog Crystal. A normal level Black Fog Crystal cost a whopping 250,000 contribution points. So expensive. Were they trying to rob him? Fang Hang shook his head. Even if he exchanged a few Black Fog Crystals, it wouldn't guarantee unlocking anything outside the game. He still had to accumulate contribution points to unlock Grandmaster level psychic abilities. Making money is tough. Fang Hang sighed and continued scrolling. Since he had advanced past the private rank, he could now exchange for some basic mechanical combat units with contribution points. However, according to the description, once the combat units were exchanged, they would directly enter the ship through the transition passage. It would be very troublesome to transfer combat units from this world to another. The other world would need to have a ship, and the ship would have to grant him permission. It was a hassle. Moreover, normal combat units weren't as useful as his zombie clones. No need to exchange them. Fang Hang casually checked the missions released by the mainframe system of the spawns. He couldn't find any suitable ones. Most of the missions were located in other worlds. To go to those worlds, he would need a ship. Where would he get a ship? Chapter 2905, Emergency Transition? Fang Hang rubbed his chin. After thinking carefully, a ship really was a good thing. It could carry a lot of items across different game worlds, and it could link up with the spawn's mainframe, easily allowing items to be transported via the transition system. If he could get one. So where did the Federation get their ship from? It should have been exchanged from the spawns, right? Does that mean, if he could raise his player honor level to a certain degree, he could also exchange a ship from the spawns? That made sense. But ships should be expensive, right? So, he still needed to keep saving money. Just as Fang Hang was contemplating, a harsh alarm suddenly rang throughout the entire ship. Warning, warning. The ship will set off in 5 minutes for a local transition. Estimated transition time, 5 seconds. Please move all personnel to the main ship's safe area immediately. Warning, warning. 4 minutes and 30 seconds until transition. Huh? Local transition? What does that mean? Fang Hang froze, not quite understanding, when he saw the Federation soldiers in the hull showing serious expressions, gripping their weapons, and taking positions at the main ship's entrances. Fang Hang asked, what's going on? The ship is making an emergency move, one soldier replied, his face serious. Mr. Feng Heng, please remain here and wait for the transition to finish. As he spoke, several officers and their teams entered the main ship's domain, gathering in different areas to stand by. Seeing a familiar officer, Lieutenant Kunji, Feng Heng asked, "Kunji, what's going on with the emergency transition? Did we run into some trouble?" "We're not sure," Kunji replied. "Emergency local transitions are rare. Since this is a local transition, I think the front line might be facing a crisis, and the whole ship is needed in battle." As the countdown entered the final minute, the metal safety doors inside the main ship began to fall. The atmosphere inside the main ship became eerily quiet, with only the sound of heavy breathing filling the space. It was a tense atmosphere, as if a major battle was about to begin. When the countdown ended, Feng Heng immediately felt a slight tremor beneath his feet. 5 seconds later, a prompt sound rang out inside the ship. "The ship has completed the safe transition." Ka, 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 ka. The safety doors throughout the hull opened again. Then, a familiar voice echoed over the ship's broadcast. "Everyone, this is Captain Korn. The warship will officially enter the main battlefield in 5 minutes. Please prepare for battle. Any teams not yet in the ship's combat sequence should go to Deck C immediately to gather and receive their mission." The team leaders of the Federation immediately began to act, forming up their teams and hastily heading to the battle preparation area. "Feng Heng, my team is responsible for the ship's attack positions. I'll take my subordinates to Deck B to execute the mission." Kunji nodded at Feng Heng. "I need to go now." "I'll go with you," Feng Heng thought. Since the situation was unclear, it would be better to go with Kunji to the deck and check things out. "All right." Kunji didn't waste time and immediately led his subordinates toward Deck B. Soon, Feng Heng followed Kunji's subordinates to the left side of the ship's deck. Standing on the deck, Feng Heng squinted as he looked out at the scene. In just 5 seconds, they had already transitioned with the whole ship to the front line. At this moment, the ship hovered in midair, and in the distance, the Federation's defensive line at the front of the insect swarm could be seen. Large swarms of insects were relentlessly charging towards the Federation's defensive line. The Federation's defense immediately launched a dense barrage, obliterating massive portions of the insect swarm. Feng Heng observed from afar. He had already heard from Colette several times about the dire situation at the front line. It was clear from today's scene that it would be difficult to deal with. The number of insects was terrifying, and from the front, the insect-covered area was a thick, endless mass, with waves upon waves constantly emerging. It was impressive that the Federation had managed to hold them back so far. Buzz. The ship emitted a buzzing sound, and a faint barrier appeared around it, floating in the air as it began to advance slowly toward the battlefield. Kunji ordered, "Enter battle readiness." Yes. The ship's deck combat zone provided turret firepower. Most of the turrets were automated, but a small number were manually controlled. In case of an emergency, all manual turrets could be taken over by the automated system. Upon hearing Kunji's command, the soldiers swiftly entered combat turrets and aimed their barrels at the incoming insect swarm. "Open fire!" Whoosh! 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 Under the suppression of the powerful long-range beam weapons, the dense insect swarm ahead fell in large groups. The ship's defensive barrier blocked the remote attacks. Overall, fighting from the ship was much safer. Inside the ship's command room, Captain Gorn was directing the ship's operations and communicating with Captain Jisel, who was at the front line. "We just made contact with Charlene's team. She is able to stabilize the queen bug, but the other mutant worms are struggling violently. She can't control all of the seed of our Ouroboros, she's only doing her best to delay us." The Federation had initially entered this world on a special mission issued by the spawns. The spawns had identified a high-level seed of Ouroboros reaction in the insect nest area and had recruited manpower to eradicate it. The biggest threat was the queen bug. Upon actual testing, it was discovered that the queen bug's strength was stronger than what the spawns had described in their data. The good news was that the queen bug was currently in a semi-hibernation state. After conducting research, the Federation devised a plan to rely on the Prism Ray to eliminate the queen bug. Captain Gorn furrowed his brow and asked, "How much longer can Charlene hold out?" "At most 5 minutes." "I understand." The ship stopped when it reached the Federation's defensive line's outer perimeter. Feng Heng stood on the deck, already remotely controlling a group of lickers to gather around here. The Federation seemed to be under heavy pressure. As the number of insect swarms visibly increased at a rapid pace, it became apparent that the Federation was beginning to struggle to hold the line, slowly retreating. Wait, if the front line collapses, his Prism Tower defense mission might collapse as well. Who would he talk to then? It was better to summon the lickers early, so if anything happened, there would be some time to respond. Kai. Huh? Feng Heng turned around, looking at the ship, his eyes showing a hint of surprise again. Chapter 2906, Polymers. As the ship gave a slight tremor, The wings on both sides unfolded, gradually shifting their form midair. A defensive line? In fact, the entire ship was a special form of defensive line. Federation players gradually abandoned their external defensive line and retreated, choosing instead to fight around the ship. In doing so, the Federation's overall offensive and defensive capabilities weren't weakened. In fact, they were somewhat enhanced. The insect swarm, on the other hand. Because the swarm left the creep-covered domain to pursue aggressively, it lost the advantage of the creep, and all of its attributes were partially weakened. The Federation controlled the ship, using the ship's formation to retreat while attacking, gradually stabilizing the situation. So the Federation wasn't completely useless after all. Did that mean he didn't need to step in? Feng Heng was pondering whether to summon the liquor swarm back to continue farming contribution points when suddenly he raised his eyebrows and looked toward the rear of the battlefield. He sensed it. The seed of Ouroboros. A game hint appeared on his retinal display. Ding! The player triggered the mission, Traces of the Seed of Ouroboros, mission name, Traces of the Seed of Ouroboros. Mission difficulty, S. Mission description, you have detected the rapidly approaching aura of the Seed of Ouroboros. Attempt to defeat and absorb it. Mission requirement, kill the Seed of Ouroboros polymers. Mission reward, none. Feng Heng stared into the distance. It was coming. Whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. In the surging tide of insects and water, several hill-like creeps suddenly emerged from the distant ground and were rapidly moving toward the front line. Seed of Ouroboros polymers. Feng Heng stared intensely at the three rapidly approaching mounds. These composite life forms were abnormally massive, their bodies thickly coated in sticky layers of creep, appearing like hills wrapped in the stuff. As they stormed the front lines, creep spilled from their bodies and began spreading outward rapidly. Federation troops, realizing what the mounds were, visibly changed expression. Aim. Numerous Star-class ship turrets locked onto the targets. Fire. As soon as the mounds entered range, thousands of dense light beams fired in succession. Dozens of them were focused energy beams. Bang. Bang bang bang. The attacks struck the mounds, causing large swathes of creep to fall away. Effective. Feng Heng saw with his own eyes that one of the mounds lost nearly a tenth of its HP under the concentrated fire. The creature hidden beneath the mound, the Seed of Ouroboros, retreated after being hit. As more creep fell from its body, it deliberately pulled back, avoiding the main firepower of the ships. At the same time, large swaths of creep worms surged forward from the rear, forcibly using their fleshly bodies to block the attacks of the energy light beam cannons for the Seed of Ouroboros polymers. Feng Heng's mind stirred. The Seed of Ouroboros polymers had the ability to control the swarm. Meanwhile, the creature continued to expand and contract, slowly regenerating the HP it had lost. It also released more gray-brown creep from within its body. The creep kept spreading outward, quickly advancing toward the player forces. Not good. Inside the ship, Gorn frowned deeply. A round of probing attacks had failed to deal significant damage to the polymers. Worse still, the spreading creep gave him a strong sense of unease. Outside the ship, Federation soldiers saw the polymers retreat behind the swarm. Unable to push through to attack directly, they could only hold their lines and stall. But mere moments into the standoff, the creep had already spread beneath the players' feet. Damn. Watch out for the creep, it's toxic. Creep was normally just disgusting and sticky, slowing movement, but not harmful. This time was different. As soon as their boots touched the creep, the Federation tactical suits auto-activated their shields, and a pulling force was felt from below. Kai. Tiny spikes suddenly pierced up from the surface of the creep. Fall back. The soldiers turned pale and quickly withdrew, using focused flamethrowers to scorch the advancing creep, slowing its spread. Just as suspected, the creep released from the polymers was unlike normal creep. The situation was deteriorating. Inside the command room, Vice Captain Gorn looked grim. While it looked like a stalemate, the Federation was already falling into a passive position. As the creep continued to spread, they were slowly being pushed back. But their retreat space was very limited. In the short term, it wasn't an issue, but at this rate, in 3 hours, they'd be backed up to the Prism Tower zone. There would be nowhere left to retreat. Captain Gorn. Hearing a voice behind him, Gorn turned and was surprised to see Feng Heng being escorted in by 2 soldiers. Feng Heng? What are you doing here? Weren't you defending the Prism Tower? I was transported over with the ship. As for the Prism Zone, the outer perimeter's already been cleared, and Jane's squads are guarding at its stable for now. Feng Heng stepped forward and pointed to the big screen showing the Seed of Ouroboros polymers. He nodded and said, I'll be brief. I want to discuss how we can work together to take down those commander-level mutant worms. Gorn's eyelids twitched as he looked at Feng Heng, surprised. He questioned, You're saying you have a way? It's worth a try. He actually had a way? That was the Seed of Ouroboros. Even the entire ship couldn't stop it. What could he do? Gorn thought Fang Heng didn't fully understand how terrifying the seeds of Ouroboros were. Captain Gorn, Fang Heng said seriously, we don't have much time. Gorn nodded, alright. What do you need me to do? Meanwhile, on the port deck of the ship, Jisoo had recently retreated with his team to the starboard side, using the ship's energy shield as cover while firing. He was watching the creep-covered mounds behind the swarm through a tactical scope. 3 in total. All appeared to be high-tier seed of Ouroboros polymers. This was bad. Even one of them would be a serious threat to the entire team. They could still stall for time now, but they had to find a way to end this fast. Captain Jisoo was deep in thought when he sensed someone approaching from behind. He lowered his scope and turned to look. Chapter 2907, Turning Point. Emery, Deputy Director of the Inspection Department. He had worked for many years in the Western District Federation Parliament and was highly trusted. A few years ago, he was transferred to the Inspection Department and appointed as the Deputy Director. It was rumored that he was ready to take over as the official minister at any time. Jisoo had met Emery several times and didn't like him. Jisoo was the first to speak. We're in a state of emergency. If you want to talk to me about Fang Heng, I suggest you don't waste your time. Hey. Emery let out a chuckle, waved his hand to signal his inspection team to back away, then looked into the distance and slowly said, what if I wanted to talk to you about the seed of Ouroboros? Sorry, I'm not interested. Emery ignored the captain's response and continued, it's true that the secret development of the seed of Ouroboros was managed by the military department, but long before that, our inspection department had already gathered quite a bit of data. We just never received authorization from our superiors to conduct experiments on the seed of Ouroboros. Jisoo had heard about this. Reportedly, there had been conflicts between the military department and the inspection department over the rights to develop the seed of Ouroboros. Eventually, the Central Federation Parliament decided to place the project under the military's control. I'm busy. What exactly are you trying to say? No need to be so hostile. We just want to cooperate. How about we share some of our data? We've gathered a lot of information over the years, both through official and unofficial channels, whether in the light or in the dark. Emery paused for a moment, then continued, in exchange, we at the inspection department would like to participate in the military's seed of Ouroboros experiment. Jisoo was increasingly irritated. After the military took over the seed of Ouroboros project, all related materials were supposed to be turned over to them. Yet Emery, clearly in possession of data, not only hadn't handed it over but was now using it to barter for entry into the project. Especially during such a critical time. Humanity as a whole was facing extinction. And still, people were playing political games. This was exactly why the Federation had been declining because of parasites like him. Jisoo's expression turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, you don't need to tell me any of this. My authority only covers ship operations. Beyond that, I follow military orders. Captain Jisoo, it seems you have a strong opinion about me. Emery looked at the captain and continued, Captain, please believe in our sincerity. Perhaps you're unaware, but due to the earlier crystal worm theft incident, our department has already submitted a request to the Federation Parliament to conduct a full investigation into the seed of Ouroboros. Even if you don't allow it, we will enter the military jurisdiction through a central parliament decision and oversee the seed of Ouroboros with official observers. I just thought it would be more beneficial to cooperate with you before exercising that authority. Humphrey. Jisoo snorted coldly. Indeed, he had heard whispers about this. Ha. Emery noticed the change in the captain's expression and chuckled. He took 2 steps forward and said, what if I told you I have the means to weaken the seed of Ouroboros polymers? Really? I told you we've gathered a lot of data on the seed of Ouroboros. We even tried developing some potions. And it just so happens that some of these potions can affect the swarm, temporarily weakening them, for instance. Where are they? Emery flipped his wrist and took a silver potion case out of his backpack, opening it in front of the captain. The case was full of various potions. These are the first batch of experimental products. You're sure they work? I swear on my life they're effective. But don't rush. Let's talk about the terms first, shall we? The captain's face darkened. I told you, I have no authority over collaborations. No problem. I'm not asking for much. Just a promise. Once the threat is neutralized, allow us to take a small portion of the seed of Ouroboros cocoons. Jisoo frowned deeply. My orders from the military are to use all means to gather the seed of Ouroboros. Hey. And they also told you to ensure this mission is a complete success. Are you sure you can achieve that with your current strength? If you fail to defeat the seed of Ouroboros polymers, forget the cocoons, you won't even complete your mission. Besides, if neither of us talks, who would ever know? Jisoo was silent and shook his head. You've got the wrong person. Everything you said today, I'll report it to the military exactly as it happened. Emery smiled slightly and turned his gaze to the front lines. Of course, that's your right. But if you change your mind, you know where to find me. Though I suspect you don't have much time left. On the front lines, as 3 Seed of Ouroboros polymer entities joined the fray, the entire Federation team fell into deep trouble and began retreating. The good news was that the ship still had plenty of materials and energy. The defensive barrier remained active and could hold out for quite a while. Emery stood calmly to the side, smiling. He could see it clearly. The Federation wouldn't last much longer. Retreat? Let's see how far you can run. When the prism barrier shatters after all that effort, let's see if you can hold back. Suddenly, Emery raised an eyebrow. What was that? Captain Jisol was also staring at the battlefield ahead, clearly surprised. That was a mutant worm. Whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Cracks split open across the ground. A large number of lickers surged up from the earth, rushing toward the insect swarm. Emery stared at the lickers emerging from the rifts, deep in thought. Were those Fang Hang summoned creatures? He had heard of them before arriving. These special mutant worm bodies had great individual power. But there weren't enough of them. Against a sea of mutant worms, 500 lickers couldn't hold the line. They were instantly swallowed by the swarm and completely overwhelmed. Although some were still alive and struggling to attack, the sheer density of enemies had significantly reduced their effectiveness. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! But the next moment, the ship's left flank suddenly unleashed a barrage of fire, focusing on a single area. The dense swarm of mutant worms was instantly cleared from that section. Emery frowned. What did that mean? Ka. At the front right of the ship, where fire had concentrated earlier, more cracks split the ground. More lickers poured out, but this time, they didn't attack. Instead, they quickly grouped up, forming a defensive line. The ship's firepower focused on the area surrounding this line, keeping the swarm at bay long enough to prevent the lickers from being overwhelmed. Emery's curiosity deepened. He couldn't help but ask, Captain, what is this? Chapter 2908, Madness. Captain Jisol was also somewhat puzzled, but it was obvious that this offensive was coordinated between Captain Gorn and Fang Hang. What were they trying to do? It was unclear. But they certainly couldn't afford to lose face in front of outsiders from the inspection department. Jisol maintained a cold expression, appearing confident and in control as he said in a cold voice, Humphrey, we from the military department are executing our mission, you just watch. Emery was intimidated. Did the military department still have some trump card they hadn't revealed? Whoosh! As both were deep in thought and full of doubt, they suddenly saw a figure descend from the ship's left output domain, quickly approaching from a high position. What? Was it Fang Hang? He went it himself? Everyone on the deck saw Fang Hang's face clearly and was collectively stunned. Was he insane? The ship's defensive barrier blocked outward attacks but not inward movements, so Fang Hang easily leapt past the ship's peripheral defensive barrier, landing steadily in the center of the temporary defensive line surrounded by more than 1,000 lickers. As per the prior agreement with Captain Gorn, most of the ship's energy cannons had already locked onto the incoming swarms, buying him a little time. So, Fang Hang took a deep breath and focused his gaze. Seed of Ouroboros. Come on. In an instant, Fang Hang and a large number of lickers simultaneously released the aura and killing intent of the Seed of Ouroboros. The killing intent of same species devourers. Although the 3 Seed of Ouroboros polymer entities gathering in the distance were incomplete, their instinctive desire to select a successor through interspecies slaughter still triggered their combative nature. Stimulated by the aura, the 3 Seed of Ouroboros polymer creatures became restless and released an even stronger killing intent, surging toward Fang Hang. They were coming. Inside the main structure of the ship, Gorn closely observed the mound of creep formed by the Seed of Ouroboros polymer and felt a jolt in his heart. Just as Fang Hang had said, the 3 Seed of Ouroboros mutant worm polymers had indeed been lured out. Gorn signaled the ship's focused energy beams to hold fire temporarily. At the same time, those on the ship's wings also showed expressions of surprise and concentrated fully on watching Fang Hang. What was happening? The Seed of Ouroboros polymer creatures burst into action, charging toward the group of lickers around Fang Hang, looking as if they intended to completely devour him. When the two sides were less than 100 meters apart, the 3 viscous creep mounds suddenly mutated again, rising sharply from the ground to more than 3 meters in height, then sweeping toward Fang Hang and the lickers, as if trying to engulf them entirely. Fang Hang flipped his wrist, and the blood-colored long sword hidden on his back slid into his hand. Whoosh! With a light tap of his toes, Fang Hang leapt forward instead of retreating, rushing toward the surging creep wave. The sword in his hand slashed forward with a powerful stroke. The blood-colored long sword flew out of his hand, instantly slicing a blood-red gash across the creep. A flash of blood light blossomed. The incoming creep wave split cleanly in two. Boom. The subsequent creep surge instantly enveloped the blood-colored long sword. Boom. A deep explosion followed. The blood-colored long sword shattered with a thunderous blast. The shards of the exploded sword pierced deep into the creep. Failed? On board the ship, everyone sensed the massive surge of lifeblood energy erupting below. That guy was a vampire. Emery stared at Fang Heng. He wasn't just a powerful summoner, his own combat strength was terrifying as well. What a pity. Emery murmured quietly. The Seed of Ouroboros was one of the strongest known high-tier abilities. Using only vampire strength to fight it was still too difficult. Perhaps if the vampire world lord himself came, there might be a chance. The thick tide of creep seemed largely unaffected and continued charging toward Fang Heng, swallowing up the liquors in its path. Pa! Fang Heng tapped the ground and retreated rapidly while maintaining focus on the front. The Book of the Dead, shrouded in a blood-red aura, appeared in front of him. Explode. The blood crystals embedded in the creep instantly detonated. Boom. Boom 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 boom. The creep tide was heavily damaged, with violent explosions erupting from within. The entire creep wave froze midair, with constant bangs and detonations echoing through the air. Under the continuous explosions of blood energy, large chunks of creep fell from the air. He had this move too? Emery's expression changed. With the blood crystals embedded inside continuously exploding, the outer layers of the Seed of Ouroboros creep gradually fell away, revealing 3 floating spheres, each more than a meter in diameter and still partially covered in creep. Now's the time. In the ship's command room, Gorn, who had been watching the battlefield closely, shouted, "Focused energy beams, fire." The ship's cannons, long aimed at the Seed of Ouroboros polymers, immediately fired dozens of focused energy beams, bombarding the targets. ZZZ. ZZZZZ. The Seed of Ouroboros polymer was immediately devastated, with creep oozing from its body and large plumes of black smoke billowing out. Visibly, the polymer's HP was dropping rapidly. The creature's instincts kicked in, and the Seed of Ouroboros began to evade, descending from its floating position toward the ground. Ha! Trying to escape? Fang Heng sneered coldly. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The lickers gathered on the ground immediately swarmed toward the Seed of Ouroboros, their sharp mandibles biting down on its outer layer and refusing to let go. Boom! The Seed of Ouroboros paused in midair and released invisible shockwave attacks from within. The licker swarm was instantly flung away by the powerful shockwaves. Bang! The remaining shockwave rippled against the ship's outer energy barrier, causing a violent crash. The barrier's energy value dropped significantly before quickly recharging with additional power. The shockwave damage was incredibly high. The Seed of Ouroboros temporarily broke free from the licker's control and continued moving toward the ground creep. It was trying to merge with the creep again. Stop it. Captain Jaisol's pupils shrank as he shouted, "Don't let it escape." The Federal soldiers all opened fire on the 3 Seed of Ouroboros polymers. Unfortunately, it was not very effective. Within half a minute, the lower half of the Seed of Ouroboros polymer had already fused into the ground creep. It was trying to flee. Fang Heng's expression turned cold. He had gone through so much trouble to lure out the 3 Seeds of Ouroboros. If they escaped now and hid back in the insect swarm, it would be extremely difficult to capture them again. Chapter 2909, Chains. Fang Heng quickly formed an imprint with both hands in front of him. Whoosh! The Book of the Dead appeared before him. Unlike an ordinary Book of the Dead, this one, after fusing with the power of blood and advancing to a god-level necromancy threshold, had a layer of blood-colored shadow attached to it. The scattered blood on the battlefield was instantly controlled and began to rush toward the Book of the Dead before Fang Heng. Kai. Kai Kai. In the next moment, hundreds of soul chains, filled with the power of blood and death, shot out from the Book of the Dead and wrapped around the 3 Seed of Ouroboros entities trying to stealthily enter the ground beneath them. Kai. Kai Kai. The soul chains immediately bound the Seed of Ouroboros entities, with the contact points sizzling as they burned through the creep beneath them. On the ship, everyone stared at this scene, their eyes filled with deep shock. Such a move existed? The Seed of Ouroboros entities were bound by the red chains and could no longer merge with the ground's creep. Instead, they were being slowly pulled away from the ground by the chain's strength. At the same time, they were under attack by focused energy beams from the ship, with their health rapidly depleting, causing them to struggle violently. The soldiers were stunned, exchanging looks with one another. Could a human player have this kind of strength? They had thought that Charlene alone was terrifying enough, but now there was another one, Fang Heng. Emery, watching from a distance, felt something strange. The blood fluctuations were undeniably vampire-like. It was even possible that Fang Heng was a king-level vampire. But this move seemed unfamiliar, and it resembled an undead soul chain. Buzz. A slight tremor was felt beneath Emery's feet. On the battlefield, the three Seed of Ouroboros entities emitted an invisible wave of power as they attempted to break free. The violent wave spread out and nearly collided with the ship's outer defense barrier, causing the entire ship to shake slightly. Feng Heng, controlling the blood-colored soul chains, was hit by the shockwave, and his mental strength was momentarily shaken, causing a strong ripple in his sea of consciousness. His face changed slightly. Humphrey. This thing was really hard to deal with. It was still struggling. Feng Heng gritted his teeth, enduring the impact from the ripple, and coldly snorted, tossing a mental strength recovery potion into his mouth. Again. His mental strength was pushed to its limits once more. The blood power on the battlefield quickly gathered towards the blood-colored chains, fusing into the blood, and within moments, the soul chains grew heavier and tightly bound the Seed of Ouroboros entities, pulling them into the air. Feng Heng was aware of his condition. Not long ago, he had fought against the mutant worm nest, and his energy had been greatly depleted. His essence had not yet fully recovered, and the recovery potion only helped him extend his time a little. After the battle, he would certainly enter a period of mental backlash. No matter. The brief time he had bought was enough for the Federation's focused energy beams to completely destroy the Seed of Ouroboros entities. Under the focused energy beams, the Seed of Ouroboros entity, suspended in midair, struggled frantically but was unable to break free from the blood-colored chain's entanglement. On the ship's starboard deck, Captain Jisel tightly watched the battlefield, his fists unconsciously clenching as he silently prayed for Feng Heng. Feng Heng. Just hold on a little longer. The Seed of Ouroboros entity rapidly shrank and expanded, black mucus fluids began to pour out, and its health was reduced to less than 10%, struggling violently. This kid really did it. Victory was near. Counting down 3 seconds. 3. 2. Whoosh. Huh? Jisel furrowed his brows as he saw a figure flash past him and dash toward the battlefield. It was Emery. Jisel's mind stirred. Emery had grown this much stronger compared to half a year ago? What breakthrough had the inspection department made? Whoosh. Emery focused on the Seed of Ouroboros entities on the battlefield, crossing through the Federation soldier team below, and hurried toward them. The Seed of Ouroboros cocoon. Boom. Emery, still less than 200 meters from the Seed of Ouroboros entities, saw them reach their damage limit and explode midair. The foul-smelling creep mucus instantly splattered in all directions, continuing to spray the creep mucus. Not good. Emery sensed a powerful threat from the mucus, quickly retreating to the side. SSS. 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 The densely scattered creep mucus, possessing strong corrosive properties, immediately burned holes into the ground, even causing smoke to rise when it touched the ship's defense barrier. The ship's defensive barrier energy dropped sharply, and a few crew members controlling the ship hastily moved backward to avoid being affected by the splashing creep mucus. Boom. 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 Before the first round of explosions from the dead Seed of Ouroboros ended, the remaining 2 Seed of Ouroboros entities followed suit and exploded. Large amounts of black creep mucus fell like a storm, completely obscuring the view ahead. The indiscriminate attacks created a forbidden zone, filled with the sizzling sounds of corrosive damage. Damn it. Emery could only retreat. In this moment of urgency, he exposed his own strength. He had actually intended to seize the Seed of Ouroboros cocoon from the military. However, the self-destructive explosion of the Seed of Ouroboros entities after death caught him off guard. Such intense attacks and terrifying corrosive abilities made it impossible for him to force his way in. On the ship, the soldiers stared at the Seed of Ouroboros entities, still in the self-destructive state, feeling a chill run down their spines. The enhanced corrosive mucus from the creep dissolved the ground, leaving deep black pits more than half a meter deep in just a few moments. Not good. Feng Heng was still within the explosion range of the creep and hadn't appeared yet. Could it be? Captain Jisel stared at Feng Heng's position, trying to make out his figure. The explosion lasted over a minute before slowly subsiding. Only then did the soldiers clearly see the aftermath, and they all showed expressions of surprise. He's still alive. Feng Heng was still standing in place. Though his body was covered in the corrosive creep mucus, he still maintained his standing posture, panting heavily. He's alive. Feng Heng glanced at the game hint. The Seed of Ouroboros had not yet reached its complete form,